more fucked up than the lies on the evening news. Well, just step right in. We can talk about it all as friends. And if you want, we can hug and kiss and make up for the party ends. Agree or disagree, stop offering me. 'Cause I'm everything you want, damn sure what you need. I won't tell no lies, back up all the facts with truth. And if you can't get down with that, you must be somebody's dude.
Hey, Hogs Twins here. Check out our friend Matthew Spirit at his podcast at The Dumb Show and his website, don'tunfriendme.com. Yeah.
Thanks. Test. All right. Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate it. So, wait for this catch up. There we go. All right. Now we got sound. Sorry, folks. I forgot to check that this morning. Not ready to go live. I mean, we're usually not going live for almost 11 hours. But three FBI whistleblowers have come forward. This is Republicans moving forward with the weaponization of the FBI, DOJ. Some of the things that they're doing, they have come forward. They do not have whistleblower protection status right now. A few of them have had their paychecks held, their clearance held. A few of them for the last 9 months have been, they're not able to get their personal belongings from housing, things to that effect. This is pretty serious. And a lot of these allegations, if true, this is kind of what people have been waiting for to hear about the FBI. And it's extremely concerning. We're going to go into it. I'll give some commentary every once in a while. Please, if you want to watch this and you don't want commentary, then go watch it on Fox. But otherwise, there will be both. So let's start in here. There's Mr. Friend is the guy going on right now, which is interesting. Sounds like a nefarious character in a cartoon or possibly in a Clue game. But let's listen to some of the testimony from here. As soon as I pump this in, hold on.
Hypothetically, I also received a letter from the FBI Executive Assistant Director.
All right,
Jennifer
so
Moore
obviously they're scrambling this. Go figure. So let me get this open.
The timing of these letters dubious, but leave that
somewhere
up to
else.
The subcommittee's determination. Instead, I would like to address and add vital.
We might have a commercial to do here, so hold on. They've been scrambling a lot of these feeds lately. They don't want them sharing on the web. I mean, this is the cable news network fighting back because they know they're losing viewership immensely. So they're fighting against people like myself who are trying to, broadcast this stuff, and they're obviously scrambling the audio. So Chrome actually works. So we're going to get into it right now. The ad's over because I don't get paid to play other people's ads. So here we go.
Information to my superiors and others that questioned the official narrative of the events of January 6th. As a result, I was accused of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. Because I did this, the FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States. Since I was suspended, there's been a dearth of communication from the FBI, with interactions seemingly only being forced by actions from my counsel or members of Congress. For example, I was not even interviewed by anyone from the FBI until May of 2022. I was suspended in January of 2022. This interaction with the FBI happened on the heels of a public statement from a congressional member in early May of 2022. The member made statements indicating the FBI was conducting a purge of employees with conservative viewpoints. Within hours of the public statements, my counsel received a phone call from the FBI wanting to see if they could conduct an interview. I promptly complied and did an interview with investigators within a week. Throughout this ordeal,
Remember to share,
I and
like,
my
subscribe,
counsel
everybody,
have
please.
responded quickly, whereas the FBI has only stonewalled. I have filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, which is pending, seeking to recover my livelihood and restore my good name. Recently, my counsel filed a whistleblower complaint with the Justice Department's Office of Inspector General. The complaint set forth retaliation through misuse of the security clearance process, as well as reprisal against me for making a protected disclosure. Interestingly enough, in the wake of filing the complaint, I received correspondence from the FBI indicating that my clearance had now been formally revoked. This occurred after filing my complaint with the IG. The new and baseless claims made in the letter had never been brought up prior to the issuance of the security clearance revocation letter. I have never had the opportunity to defend myself. I only had one interview with the FBI, which occurred a year ago after apparent prompting from Congress. In that interview, the investigators, towards the end of the interview, uttered in response to my exasperation, "Don't sue us." This has been a trying circumstance for me and my family. It has been more than a year since the FBI took my paycheck from me, and we're getting financially crushed. My family and I have been surviving on early withdrawals from our retirement accounts, while the FBI has ignored my request for approval to obtain outside employment during the review of my security clearance. We have lost our federal health insurance coverage, and there's apparently no end in sight. I'm hopeful scrutiny from Congress and from the Inspector General will deter the FBI from abusing the security clearance process to retaliate against others the way it's retaliated against me. This is why I filed a whistleblower retaliation complaint with the IG and why I'm here today to answer your questions. Thank you. And I also have a rebuttal if the member will allow me to. Thank you. This is a rebuttal of the FBI correspondence just recently sent to the committee in reference to my clearance suspension and now revocation. Calumny is not a word to be thrown around.
So I want to mention a few things real quick before we continue. We're going to watch this whole thing, but my views are, from a conspiratorial nature, skeptical at best. Like, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I don't put much stock into it. I think the biggest conspiracy theory I've ever participated in was the Kennedy assassination, and really not following conspiracies because of belief, but following because of disbelief and trying to disprove my own theory of what took place, which wound up being confirmed when the documents were recently released, the 14,000 some odd pages of documents that laid it at the CIA's doorstep. But the thing that troubles me is that there are a series of breadcrumbs that are being laid to have a white supremacist initiated attack similar to Oklahoma City bombing. And it's troubling because I'm seeing the groundwork being laid for this, and there's certain signs that are coming out that would be done in what people would say would be a psyop or a false flag. And honestly, it's not like those things haven't happened in the past. And whether the U.S. government is getting involved in elections or running counterintelligence operations in foreign countries, or systematically trying to erode the command and control of opposing governments or whatever it would be. Of course, this is all done. It's usually ran by the CIA. And throughout history, this has happened. And to assume it hasn't happened in the United States would be extremely naive. And I think we have evidence of that with the John F. Kennedy assassination as just one of several intelligence operations that have happened inside the United States. Not conspiracy theory, absolutely confirmed. We understand this. We know this. And it doesn't mean that every single thing that happens is laid at the government's doorstep, but there are breadcrumbs and trails that we need to be aware of, and we need to be made aware of. And I wish the 30,000 people were watching this, because this is terrifying to me that people aren't engaged. I know we all have work, we all have things going on, but there should be a heightened sense of awareness when it comes to this type of stuff, because eventually the lid's going to blow, and Democrats can only suppress it for so long. And this is unraveling, and it's going to continue to unravel. Why do you think they fought so hard for the House? Because the House has subpoena power, and they have the ability to do this. And all of the attacks that went on from Russian collusion and everything else that were completely 100% unverifiable and false, there's going to be repercussions, and we're going to find out why the DOJ was weaponized, why the FBI was weaponized, and here we are. But there's some things that I'm trying to talk to you and make you aware of, is that there is a very large push that started about a year and a half ago, that white supremacy is back in the United States, and it's the single most the way they're portraying it is the single biggest threat to domestic policy, democracy, and the way of the United States. And I certainly do believe that white supremacy is something that is a threat in any way, shape, or form to any society, as any supremacy based on race would be. And history will tell us that it's dangerous, that it's some of the worst things have happened, and most atrocities in the world have happened because of religion or racial or ethnic cleansing. These are usually warning signs. So, of course, it is a very large threat. But is it a threat in the United States? Absolutely not. In the sense that, you know, we're not seeing businesses saying these people can only come in, right? You might have a baker in Colorado who decided not to go ahead and make a gay cake, but those two people went ahead and crossed 6 different counties and traveled, 160 miles in order to ensure that the worst possible scenario would take place, and unabridged were told that they couldn't shop here, and therefore made sure that that was the place that they went ahead and went to in order to gain the attention they need. Of course, there were other shops that would be happy to do that, and traveling 160 miles in over 6 different counties doesn't seem to be the most genuine of hate crime versus a certain demographic of people. We saw this with Matthew Shepard in Wyoming, homosexual who was beaten and left for dead. These things take place, and they are horrible, and they are rancid, and they are not a part of a civilized society. But assuming that we're seeing systemic policies being put into place that subjugate a certain class of people or a certain race of people to different standards and treatment, or circumvents their rights, the only people who are really having that done to them are parents, are people who are going to school board meetings, people who are Trump supporters who are being called Nazis and fascist, or because they have an American flag. All of these things are actually reversal of what we're hearing, that there's some white supremacist group that is causing these problems, when really it's people propagating their own policy and their own narrative against a group of people who really have no desire other than to be left alone, to raise their families the way they want to. And here's what we're seeing. Now, this whole thing, this narrative of a white supremacist push, we just recently saw this with the Patriot Front. These are the guys in the white masks who marched in D.C. They're talking more and more about these supremacy groups and the revitalization of the Ku Klux Klan. I'm in Virginia. We have an active Klan cell near our house, and we've talked about this. These people aren't out there burning crosses. They're not doing anything. And honestly, if they did, we would literally shut them down in a New York minute in this city, in this town. I don't see a rise in white supremacy in this country. And I live in this realm, I live in this field, but what I am hearing is an increased narrative about white supremacy and white supremacist militant groups. But it's interesting that a lot of these militant groups are simply parents who are challenging the whole trans narrative that our children should explore their sexual identity at 6 years old, or genital mutilation, or chemical castration. These things are unacceptable to anyone, whether you're white, green, yellow, brown, pea sitting up, down, left, right. It doesn't matter. Most people in America don't want that for their children. That doesn't make you a terrorist. If you go to a school board and want to challenge them on what they're teaching children, that doesn't make you a terrorist. But this whole narrative, as you're seeing these groups demonstrate and have U-Haul trucks load up their flags and then go into the subway and then disappear. Rumors that some of them are FBI. These whistleblowers will tell you that FBI were on the ground in January 6th, and they're going to testify to that. There is a narrative being laid and breadcrumbs being laid that there is something imminent coming from white supremacist groups. And then one of the biggest slaps in the face this morning, which you may or may not know, and I guarantee you don't, because the media is not talking about it. They're talking about this. And this is probably one of the most concerning things that I've heard. I'm going to do a show on this later today. But Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing, we all remember this. This was the bombing in Oklahoma City that took out the federal building and was 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate, essentially TNT, anthro, a destructive and extremely violent explosive, slow moving, that tears and rips things apart. This is what was used, 4,800 pounds. Well, there is a train that goes from California to Wyoming that had an entire car emptied of ammonium nitrate, 60,000 pounds. 60,000 pounds. 13 barrels was used by Timothy McVeigh. 60,000 pounds is equivalent to 156 barrels of ammonium nitrate is missing. Nobody knows where it's at. It's gone. As out of something in Breaking Bad with methylamine being siphoned from a tank in a black area in New Mexico, as you know, Jesse and Walter White go ahead and pump and put it into a plastic container underground and siphon methylamine to make methamphetamines and do it in a black ops style. This is confirmed. This train is empty. They have no idea how it happened. They have no idea who did it. They have no idea of the chain of custody or possession. Folks, 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate. That's not a joke. That's to me, when you hear certain things on the internet, a lot of it is, no big deal. Who cares? This is stupid. Like, oh, there was another ag fire or a food processing plant caught fire. Well, there's 60,000 food processing plants. COVID limited the amount of people who work in them. Of course, quality control is not going to be checked. Machinery is not going to be checked at the rapid clip that it is. Standards are going to lower because you're running with a skeleton crew. There's going to be fires, right? I mean, it happens. And if you look at throughout history, the increased amount of fires is honestly the same amount that it's happening in small businesses and other places because of the lack of personnel. It's not a huge skyrocket from previous years, 2015, 2010, 2005. It's all the same. But when something like fucking this happens, you're damn right that a guy who knows what happens around the world and has seen the things and was responsible for tracking these type of things and ensuring that people were aware of these type of things, you're seeing an absolute breadcrumb trail of concern that there will be a major attack in the United States before the election, and it will be laid at the feet of this white supremacist narrative. Now, if some white supremacist group does this, well, then of course, I would expect the FBI to be absolutely thorough in its design and be almost Machiavellian in its slake for lust to ensure that these people are caught. Good for you. Use the Patriot Act. Do illegal wiretaps. I don't give a shit what you have to do to save American lives. Find out what it is and do it. But when you hear 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate in a boxcar are just gone, just poof. And this is in 3 or 4 major publications that are confirming this, and the mass media is not. And you don't feel an FBI presence on this, and you don't see a task force being assigned. And you don't have the FBI offices in California and in Wyoming absolutely lit up like Christmas trees, and every state that train went through, which would make sense that it would be Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and possibly Utah, and then through Colorado into Wyoming, because that's the way the train lays and the train tracks lay. You have a multi-state crime that has taken place. I don't care if you agree with the Patriot Act comment. I don't give a shit. I don't care. It's in place. It's being done every single day. Teraflops of information an hour are being seized. You know what? If we're going to be spied on, we might as well be using it for something good. You may not agree with the Patriot Act comment. I don't care. To pretend that it's not happening is juvenile. So if they're going to invade our privacy and they're going to do this, then the answer should be that every single terrorist act is thwarted and we're updated on it, because then we need to see the battle of attrition. We need to see that we sacrificed our privacy. You're going to go ahead and do it whether we like it or not. So we better see some freaking results from this, but we're not seeing results from this. We're seeing mass school shootings taking place where they knew the assailant, they knew the people involved, and it's not being stopped. I'm not condoning the Patriot Act. What I'm saying is if it's going to be used anyway, we might as well see some good from it. But when you have 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate being lopped from a train and nobody knows where it's at, do you think possibly that all of these things connect together? Do you get my point? Do you get what I'm trying to say? As I'm saying that there are breadcrumbs being left here that we're being told that the worst domestic threat, the worst threat to the United States and our democracy, our republic, our Constitution, is white supremacy in the United States. White supremacy in the United States, which I completely disagree. I think the border is a bigger threat. I think what's going on over in Ukraine is a bigger threat. I think a nuclear weapon being launched or being hit on U.S. soil from a suitcase bomb is a bigger threat. I think a disease that is 10 times more lethal than COVID is a bigger threat. I think our water supply, I think our power and industry, our electrical grid, our computer systems and banking systems are all bigger threats than white supremacy in the United States. I think you can go down to botulism and typhoid and chickenpox and measles are probably a bigger threat than white supremacy in the United States. Yes, I understand they exist. No, I'm not condoning. I think they should be eradicated from the earth. Anybody who is a supremacist based on race, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation, whatever it may be, those people do not belong in a civilized society, period, full stop. But what you don't get to do is lay the groundwork for some January 6th type cataclysmic national event that would rally people around the Democratic Party and Joe Biden and not ask the question, what's going on? Why is 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate missing from a boxcar in Breaking Bad style that just poofed? Do you understand the infrastructure that would take place to move 156 barrels of ammonium nitrate, 60,000 pounds? Do you understand how much of a lift that is? One semi truck is going to get what, maybe 25 to 50 barrels in it. We're talking giant barrels, the 50-gallon drums. Can you imagine how much that's going to take? So you're talking what, 3 or 4 semi trucks? Where did this happen? And it wasn't already stored like that, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Or was it in the boxcar and they were all beautifully packed in 50-gallon drums and then they were rolled off and put on? Do you know how much those 50-gallon drums weigh? Was there forklifts involved? Was there a crane operator involved? Did they do this on flat ground? Did they do this in the middle of what? The Badlands of Utah? How did 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate get loaded onto a train in California and didn't show up in Wyoming? And nobody knows the chain of custody. 2 weeks. It changed hands more times than the doorknob at a local real estate open house. And there's no accounting for it. So what happens if there's a major terrorist attack in the United States? What happens? Are people going to compare the dots and say, well, what happened to this 60,000 pounds? Because here's the thing. Here's the purpose of liquid fertilizer or ammonium nitrate in pellet form. There's not many. There's not many. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but there's about 3 or 4 things that you can use these things for on a consistent basis. And 2 of them are horribly bad. So maybe I'm just a little bit concerned. And no, I don't agree with the Patriot Act. I think it is single-handedly the largest breach of the Constitution and our rights ever in U.S. history. But if we're going to use it, then fucking use it. And find out where 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate is. Find out why the Patriot Front and these white supremacist groups are not being infiltrated. And if they are being infiltrated, why are we collecting intel and not start making arrests? Stop fucking building cases against these people and get them on the most trivial things and break up the core. Shut these groups down. But what you don't get to do is be the federal government on a controlled substance, an explosive, which is like a Class A substance that you cannot get without proper licensing, that every single portion of sale is tracked based upon metric units of weight and scale. Just like you can't buy ephedrine or you can't buy Sudafed because of the pseudo that's inside of it that you can actually use to make methamphetamines. That's why you can't go buy 100 boxes of Sudafed anymore, because people are rolling it into meth and using cooks with a pseudo cook for it. It's a controlled substance, just like testosterone replacement therapy or hydrocodone or Oxycontin or narco. You can't just go and buy this shit. You cannot just go and buy ammonium nitrate at this scale without being flagged by the FBI. So you're telling me if I go buy 2 bags, I'm going to have a visit by the FBI, but 60,000 fucking pounds of this stuff goes missing and we don't hear word one on the national news? Why not? If these things don't concern you, it should. And this is probably the most conspiracy theory driven comment I have ever made on my show in 2.5 years. I do not dabble in this stuff, but I am seeing the breadcrumb trail for something that is absolutely cataclysmic going to happen in the United States. And I feel like I'm Glenn Beck today. I feel like I'm Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck every single day. Something's going to happen. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but something is making me extremely nervous. And it may have to do with end of times and Satan coming up from hell. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but something's telling me that soon the coming of Christ, that's Glenn Beck. I'm not doing that. But what I'm telling you is, as a formal intelligence guy, and if Leroy heard this, both of us would have alarm bells going off. Don't you remember that fireworks plant that I believe it was in Lebanon that went off? That was all ammonium nitrate. It was all fire. That's essentially what's being used. Think about that. Think about the size of that explosion, which literally took out several city blocks. That is the volume of ammonium nitrate that we're talking about. Imagine the devastation that would take place with this. It's concerning. It's not like somebody went ahead and got some Nickelodeon slime or something on a truck. Or someone just got, freaking 60,000 pounds of aromatic Arabic coffee that was meant for Seattle's best. This is ammonium nitrate. This is weapon grade explosive if put in the wrong hands. Why isn't the FBI talking about this? Why isn't this on the national news? Why don't we have the tip lines going on? Why don't you see a multi-state investigation happening right now at a scale that we've never seen before? And I'm telling you right now, I've been saying it for 2.5 years. There are 2 major things that will keep Joe Biden in office: war and a major U.S. attack. And I'm not the one that's talking about this. This is the news media every single day. Domestic terrorism, white terrorists, parents. It started with parents. Now you see these nationalist groups marching. That looks completely staged. Completely staged. Everybody wearing pants, everyone wearing, suspenders, having their faces covered. They can't even march. They look like a bunch of clowns. Having upside down flags as patriots. What are we doing? And then wrapping them up nonchalantly and shoving them in the back of a U-Haul. And then all of them disappearing on the subway. What the fuck? What is it? I watched Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, feds. And I don't know if they're feds. But what I do know is that most white supremacists don't call themselves patriots. They don't go ahead and rock the American flag. Most white supremacists rock the Southern flag, where the etymology of white supremacy in the United States stems and originates from, by Democrats, mind you. Most of them will have symbology towards the Iron Cross or the SS or other markings. You will see a formulation of the swastika with most Aryan white nationalist groups. Now, if you're saying there's this new white nationalist group that takes pride in the United States and the 50 stars, that's antithetical to white supremacist groups. The U.S. flag is antithetical to white supremacist groups. Do you understand that? Do you understand what it stands for? Do you really think a white supremacist group is going to go ahead and share a star on a flag that has California in it, New York, Washington, Oregon? Give me a fucking break. They're probably going to rock an old 13 stars flag. They're probably going to do the stars and bars. They're certainly not going to go ahead and put it upside down, which is symbolic of what people are doing on Facebook to turn the U.S. flag upside down, which does not show a nation in distress. It's disrespectful to the flag. It's not used to show nation in distress. That's never what it was designed for. It's to show a single fortified or building structure or a group of people, and this goes back to the American Revolution, would fly the flag upside down to notify incoming troops or incoming body or a visit by A, B, C, or D that the fort is under distress, or something is taking place where there is trouble. It's not to be used as to signify that the nation is in distress, because there is no one capturing that. If you're on YouTube, I'm sure somebody's in there. The whole point of this is that these things right here, yet you're hearing, are leading to some sort of something or other in the United States that doesn't feel really good to me. And I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I'm telling you something is being laid at our feet that's setting people up for something extremely nefarious or devastating in the United States to solidify the narrative. Because you can sit here and say white supremacist groups are the most dangerous group ever all you want. You can say that, and they are. And they're horrible for a free society. I'm not saying that. But until something at a cataclysmic scale or a national event happens, it's really just lip service. This is when we understood that Al-Qaeda and ISIS were truly dangerous, when something like the USS Cole, or looking at the World Trade Center bombings, both of them, or looking at the base in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, put these people on the map as no longer the JV team, as Obama called them, and said, holy shit, this is serious. Something large has to happen in order to lend credence to this doomsday and fear that's being pushed down our throats. White supremacist groups have been in the United States for 200 some odd years. And although need to be watched and completely shunned and have no light of day to speak, whether it be from David Duke or a grand wizard or some skinhead in San Francisco, none of them get the pulpit. But to say they single-handedly are the largest threat to the United States and not have an event since Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma City of this scale, and some shootings that have taken place, yes, serious and tragic, but to say they're the biggest threat, you better have an event to go ahead and say, well, look at this is what they've done. And that's what scares me. So either we are being set up that a major event in the United States is going to happen where we all need to be concerned, which, okay, let's get frosty. Let's have our head on a swivel. Let's start looking at these groups and doing whatever we can and stop looking at American citizens and moms and dads, and let's infiltrate these fucking groups. And if we're going to have the Patriot Act, then use the damn thing to get the group so this doesn't happen. Or we're being set up for an event that is not based upon a white supremacist group, but something even more nefarious. That is the question we should be asking right now. I'm sorry I went off on this, but it scares the hell out of me. It got me up enough to say, I'm not going to write anything. I'm getting online and we're going to show this. And then right when I see that article and right when I start focused on it, this happens. And I'm like, you know what? If you have enough signs, then you can see the story if you just open up your eyes. Let's go ahead and watch this a little bit. We got a lot of people.
Lightly. In regards to the FBI's treatment of me,
it doesn't surprise you is that in a different part of the country, you saw that same pressure from the Washington field office. And did they ever try to get you to do something that was outside the normal order of law enforcement activity?
Yes, sir.
And what did the Washington field office try to get you to do that violated the law and regulations?
They tried to get me to serve a federal grand jury subpoena when there was no proper predicate to do so.
And the reason there was no predicate was because it was based on an anonymous tip, right?
That's correct.
And time and again, the Washington field office was trying to pressure you without corroboration to go start process on people. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And so while I agree that January 6th was a violent day, a bad day, a day that nobody wants to relive, violence on January 6th doesn't justify weaponizing the government against people who were innocent and did nothing wrong. Thank you for blowing the whistle on that. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a sincere point of inquiry. Rule 11, Clause 2.
Gentleman is not recognized.
I have a question about the rules.
Mr. Lynch for 5 minutes.
It's a point of order, a question about the rules.
Point of order. State your point of order.
The point of order is why does
No,
Rule 11, Clause 2, subsection E1A not apply to this subcommittee? I can read for you. Each committee shall keep a complete record of all committee action, which shall include, in the case of a meeting or hearing transcript, a substantially verbatim account of remarks actually made during the proceedings, subject only to some technical things. Such records shall be the property of the House, and each member, delegate, and the resident commissioner shall have access thereto. Why does that not apply? Where is the whistleblower exception in the rules of Congress that says that does not apply?
It's the prerogative of the committee to decide.
No, it's not. It's the rules of the House.
We have the whistleblower testimony. The whistleblower does not wish that to be made available to the Democrats at this
time. The
time.
whistleblower doesn't make committee rules, sir.
Mr. Lynch is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, is the ruling?
I just want to make people aware of something. I've served in the United States military for almost 5 years. Worked with the United States government in a capacity other than that for several years. Worked with veterans, worked with veteran companies, and represented veterans for 9 years. Have friends in government, friends in alphabet agencies, friends who are currently active serving in a contractor capacity, in a military capacity. I have an outstanding relationship with the law. I have always obeyed the law. I have always obeyed, yes, many friends in special operations, Mike. That is correct. I have a good reputation amongst Republicans, good reputation amongst the community. I'm foul-mouthed. I'm arrogant. I'm cocky, and I can be intimidating. All of these things. I want to make it perfectly clear. This morning, I probably am now being watched by the FBI in a way that I've never been watched before. I've been watched by several alphabet agencies, one out of necessity because I held clearances, and I expect that oversight. I have been watched because maybe some of the things that I have said have been too close to home, I'm sure, or hit a mark, or could be sensitive, and therefore let's go ahead and watch and see what this guy's about, and then simply gloss it over because what I'm saying is completely open source and factual, and that's why I'm not being censored by Facebook anymore or censored by Twitter or any other major platform, because I'm not a threat because I'm not making up falsehoods and making up false equivalencies or simply shilling for a certain group of people. Now, that's my resume. I promise you, after what I just said today, I will be watched in a capacity as somebody who needs to be watched from a threat level perspective. I guarantee you that every single alphabet agency which is charged to monitor social media channels is watching me right now. I promise you. With no equivocation, and I have no evidence of it. I can just tell you from past experience that if this came across my AOR, I would watch, because you have a person talking about ammonium nitrate, 60,000 pounds missing from a train, who mentioned Timothy McVeigh, who mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing, who mentioned white supremacy, who is displaying whistleblowers from the FBI right now. You put all of that together, the context of that is immaterial. There are warning flags to say that that person needs to be monitored, because I would have done it. If it came across my AOR and my area of responsibility and I got flagged with this, I would monitor the person talking about this. So I want to make sure it's absolutely clear. I am not condoning for violence against the United States government. I am not supporting any violence from any group doing this. I'm not accusing the United States government of perpetuating violence. I am asking questions and for people to be aware and to watch the signs that tell us from point A to point B that there is something being laid at our feet. And either it is from a white supremacist group that is setting off alarm bells for the FBI, the CIA, the NRO, the NSA, Department of Homeland Security, and every other alphabet agency which is responsible for protecting international and national interests, to have them focus on these groups, from rumblings in prisons to message traffic over Xbox or Skype, to rallies where they have human interests and human intelligence assets monitoring these groups, that is showing some sort of level of intelligence that something nefarious is being plotted into the United States by these groups. That is why they are a big concern, and it's not being released to the United States. So either A, that is true, or B, the opposite is true. That we're being told that these groups are the biggest threat to the United States, that we are missing 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate, that we are laying a story that is similar to the Timothy McVeigh run-up in Oklahoma City. And we need to be concerned that why this narrative is being pushed and why these breadcrumbs are pointing to a spot that something before the U.S. election will take place that will solidify and unify America around the Democratic Party or Joe Biden. Because there's only one party weaponizing the DOJ. There's only one party weaponizing the IRS. There's only one party weaponizing and using CIA to run operations in the United States and surrounding areas in North and South America. We can sit here and pretend that's not true, but we got that with the Durham report. We understand that the whole Russian collusion story was completely bunk. And although there were things that the Donald Trump administration and people he worked for in the past and in the semi-present, the quasi-present, have done things nefarious and needed to be held accountable, specifically to Russian collusion in the 2016 election, there was nothing. So yes, the 37 to 42 some odd $47 million that they spent on the Mueller investigation certainly resulted and generated a certain level of result, but nothing that had to do anything with the 2016 election. We found that the FISA warrant was completely false. We found that going after administration officials inside the Trump administration with wiretaps, with creating false warrants and creating up stories with British spies, all of these things lead up to certain events where the government has overreach and has weaponized the DOJ and the FBI. And now you're hearing whistleblowers in an open testimony in open court who are afraid to talk to news media because they spin their story. And they're doing this in open court. And you have Democrats who are fervently against this open testimony, yet they were completely okay with Colonel Vindman doing it, or other whistleblowers, or other leakers, and supporting them through the Whistleblower Act, and not allowing these FBI agents to have whistleblower status so they are protected, having their salaries seized, having their clearances suspended, being censured. Shouldn't these things be absolutely unacceptable? It's interesting.
Of the chair always unquestioned, or do we have a vote on how some of these issues are decided?
If you state a proper point of order and there's some kind
I
of...
just did state a point of order.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes of question.
Mr. Friend, I want to ask some questions about surrounding the circumstances of the removal of your clearance by the FBI.
Come on, Mr. Lynch, you're on the clock. Get prepared.
Friend, I'd like to ask you about your move to the domestic terrorism unit. You originally transferred to Daytona from the FBI's Omaha field office, Sioux City Residence Agency in June 2021, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force at the end of September 2021, correct?
Yes, I was reassigned.
Okay. And you had been exclusively working on child sex abuse material known as CSAM cases, is that correct?
Prior to that point, yes.
And that was before you moved to the JTTF, isn't that right?
Yes.
Did you stop working on child abuse cases after October 1st, 2021?
No, I did not.
Well, in fact, the FBI planned to find a replacement for you when you moved from one position to the other, is that correct?
Which office are you referring to?
So, when you were moved from the child sexual abuse cases and moved to the JTTF, you were informed that the FBI would find a replacement for your other position. Was that correct?
No, that's not correct at all. I was told that those cases were going to be considered a local matter going forward. They would not be resourced, and that I was going to be reassigned to work on domestic terrorism cases. At the time, my supervisor retired, and his interim told me there was not enough work to do. So then,
JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, for those of you who are not
until
aware.
a full-time replacement could come in to continue to work on the child pornography investigations and make myself available for domestic terrorism cases. And then when my new supervisor arrived early in 2022, I explained that arrangement to him, and he agreed that that was the best use of my time, even though I was told to, on my timesheet, account for my actions as being solely devoted to domestic terrorism. I was in a situation where I was essentially only working.
I don't see Nadler running the meeting, Amy. I see Jim Jordan running the meeting. Am I wrong?
Child pornography and human trafficking cases.
I just want to point out that in your interview with the committee, you stated that you were told you could balance both until a permanent replacement arrived. That was during your transcribed interview. Are you restating that or disputing that now?
I'm not disputing that. I was unofficially said, just keep doing what you're doing, but on paper and on your timesheet, we're going to put you down as a domestic terrorism agent.
You said here that they told you you could balance both responsibilities until your replacement arrived. Are you disputing that now? I'm disputing that there was no replacement that was going to be arriving, ever. I was told that that violation was not going to be worked after I was moved over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And subsequently, But here you're saying that you were allowed to do both jobs until your replacement arrived. So your assumption then was not that the replacement was not going to arrive, right? Are you talking about a replacement for my supervisor or a replacement for me? For the responsibilities that you were doing under the child sex abuse cases.
There was no replacement that was going to arrive in our office for that. Those cases were going to be.
He's already said
no
that 4
longer
times.
That would
For the
be
love of God,
conjecture on your
Lynch.
part at that point, right?
No, I was told that.
Okay.
He was told that someone else was absorbing the responsibilities and it was moving to a different department. So of course he wouldn't be replaced. Why can't these politicians listen? Now, by the way, for the FBI and everyone else who decided to tune into my show this morning, he has an angry disposition and he uses angry language. You know, when you observe stupidity and you aren't in a formal professional role and you own the show that you're the boss, it's amazing how people act like they're really who they really are. So I understand putting on the tie and being pomp and circumstance and staying in line. Yeah, I did that shit for 25 years, but I'm my own boss. So if I want to cuss and get pissed off, I can. And it doesn't mean that I can't act professional. And it doesn't mean I have an axe to grind. And it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and be all volatile. Thank you very much. I have an absolute right to say that this guy's a fucking dumbass if I want to, and I'm not being volatile. I'm being honest. And if you weren't wearing a tie and you weren't a pencil pusher for the fib, you would feel the same way. Come on. And by the way, I know plenty of guys in the FBI too.
You continue to work the child abuse cases until you were suspended in 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you even received an award for your CSAM work in July 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, you got this award after you took on all the child exploitation cases for the local sheriff's officer earlier that same year, while also working your TTF responsibilities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You took on the role of a full-time employee assigned to work child abuse investigation cases, correct?
Yes.
I took on the role of whatever I was needed to work. I made myself available to work domestic terrorism, but there was not enough work to do.
There you go, buddy.
So could you tell us that you were reassigned? And so first, you tell us that you were reassigned and told that the CSAM cases weren't a priority. Then you tell us that not only did they plan on replacing you, they let you continue working those cases until you were suspended. Is that correct?
Yes, it was no longer a priority on paper. This is the way that the FBI allocates its manpower resources. So on paper, I was not supposed to be recording my work on those cases. But then within my office, which was not in the Jacksonville headquarters, my frontline supervisor agreed that my time was better spent working on CSAM cases.
All right, Mr. Chairman, my time has
Gentleman's
expired.
time has expired.
That's it? That's all you got?
From
What a
Florida for 5
douche.
minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all our gentlemen for appearing before us today and coming forward. I want to thank you again for your courage today and also for your service to our nation. And as we predicted, our Democrat colleagues have immediately opened up with claims of conspiracy theories, MAGA extremism, mock outrage. Seems the only ones displaying mock outrage up here today are, in fact, the Democrats. Because according to them, journalists who appear before us aren't journalists, and you here today are not whistleblowers, but we in fact know that you are. But interesting times. The line about Republicans defunding police, that one seems to be particularly special because, respectfully to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as the wife of a SWAT medic, as the wife of a first responder currently who has served our community for the last 16 years, I can tell you with certainty that no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop. No one. And I see from you nodding your head that you agree with that sentiment. It is an act.
I love Kat Kamek. I was talking to her campaign advisor and person who handles her calendar, and I got her this close to coming on the show, and I just kind of forgot about it. And I'm sure she didn't care too. She was busy. I want to get her on, and I'm gonna reach out and see if I can, because I really like her. This is a picture of Congressman Stephen Lynch. Yeah. He is a October 2001. He's a lifetime politician. He's been there for 22 years. He replaced John Moakley. Went to Wentworth Institute of Technology. He's a lawyer. He passed the bar. Actually, 1994, he was elected as Massachusetts House of Representatives. So he's been in there for 30 some odd years. Labor guy, union guy. He's on the Anti-Terrorism Task Force and Proliferation Financing Congressional Panel. Yeah. Obviously a liberal Democrat. That's fine. His line of questioning seems prepared. Looks like he didn't read it over. It was given to him. I can't blame him for his line of questioning, although stupid and immaterial and has nothing to do with anything. It just demonstrates that he doesn't understand the inner workings of government office, whether it be working in a military unit or working for a .gov. He doesn't understand that you are slopped massive amounts of work with no increase in pay. You work additional hours as that's your reward. When you do a good job in the government, you get more work and you get no more pay, which equates to basically less pay because you're working more, working harder. So working in intelligence is the same way. It's a multifaceted role. You may be doing intelligence briefs on 24-hour cycles, and then you get rewarded with working in strike or working in imagery analysis, or going out and working with the radiomen, listening to certain message traffic, or working with the operations specialists on navigation details on a Hong SS submarine coming in. You work more. You don't get more. And they don't necessarily backfill your position when the new IS comes in. They give him work that is not just extra on what you're doing. They expand his responsibilities if he does well too. This is the way the government works. So to try to make a correlation that he was removed from one task force or removed from one AOR and put on another as some sort of penalty, when truly his responsibilities that he was doing in addition to his normal responsibilities were reassigned to a different department or under a different tree or hierarchy, sounds like an average Monday in any government office. And this guy got these talking points and couldn't put them together because the Democrats don't know what these whistleblowers are going to say necessarily, and they are just going to try to discredit them. Instead of shutting up and listening and saying, okay, these might be from Republican sources, but they listen to our whistleblowers. Look at the January 6th committee. Look how the Republicans handled that information and what they did listening to those whistleblowers. I didn't hear a lot of discrediting Capitol Police officers by Republicans. Did anyone else? Yeah, there were a few nut jobs who did, but those people aren't Republicans. They're just a bunch of fucking shills. Why don't we go ahead and just treat whistleblowers as they deserve to be treated if we're going to condone people narking and ratting off shit that happens under a classified setting, and we're going to go ahead and put our arms around people like that, then you got to put your arms around people like this. But the Democrats aren't going to do that. They're going to do whatever they can to discredit these guys and make them look nuts or make them look like right-wing extremists, MAGA people. Why? Because that's what they do.
Accurate and wrong to make that assumption that Republicans want to defund police. It is false because
statistics as it relates to January 6th, how they were inflating those statistics to make it look like there was a bunch more cases than there really was.
Well, typically, you would investigate January 6th as one case with lots of subjects, but instead the decision was made to open up a separate case for every single individual there, and instead of on paper investigating them from the Washington field office, spreading and disseminating those to the field offices around the country, and if the individual lived in that area.
We have votes on the floor.
Made it look like there was domestic terrorism cases and activities that were going on around the 56 field offices, when in fact the cases were really all from Washington, D.C., and Washington field office had a task force that was responsible for calling the shots in all those cases.
Thank you guys for being here. My time's expired.
Gentleman yields back. We have votes on the floor to our witnesses, so we will take a break now. We will stand in recess until 15 minutes after the close of the vote, the final vote on the floor. And you guys are welcome to wait here in the back. The committee stands in recess.
So we're going to go watch some Fox coverage real quick and analysis on this. I want to listen to this real quick.
And Fox News contributor is with us. Yeah. Andy, I think we'll probably have lots of questions for you.
And I apologize to the people. Some of that is the recording capabilities that we have now are extremely limited because a lot of, as you know, cable news isn't doing very well. We know that for a fact. And they're starting to scramble signal and not allowing sites, digital sites like Fubo and Sling to actually rebroadcast without scrambling audio or anything else, because it recognizes that a recording software program's up. And like HDCP technology, which was used for digital HDMI transfer through HDMI 1, 1.2, and 1.3, if I'm losing you, I apologize. This is now happening with digital content from recording sources on computers, because they don't want us rebroadcasting this, because they want control. They don't want you watching it here. And as long as I add contribution to this isn't copyright infringement. I can broadcast this shit all day long. So this is the problem, because now internet sources are becoming news sources for most Americans, and they don't want that to happen. So unfortunately, we'll get the analysis here. This is now being recorded. I have it streaming through Fubo. I hope you guys are happy. I now have to pay $275 for my cable bill each month in order to get these unlimited streaming, so my family can still watch TV and we can do it at the same time. I don't want you to feel guilty. Just go buy a freaking hat or something once in a while. Here we go.
If you could just give us your overall big picture take on what you just heard.
Well, it's obviously a very...
Brenda Shepard says they paid their whistleblowers, what I believe anyway. You know what? I don't know about that. I know that there's money being paid by Kash Patel and a few others to these FBI whistleblowers, but these whistleblowers have lost their income. Some of them have been suspended for 9 to 11 months based upon this, with absolutely no meritable reason to suspend them that we're aware of right now. And yes, Republicans are taking care of them financially. I don't know what to say about that. But if you can't pay your rent and you can't pay your food and you can't buy formula for a baby, in my opinion, that is a way to strong arm these whistleblowers and punish them by removing their ability to make income, suspending their clearances so they can't go find another job, keeping their personal belongings on paid housing. This shit is unacceptable. So you know what? I have no doubt in my mind that even some of the Democrat whistleblowers, but if we're going to believe these whistleblowers from Republican sources, you must do the same thing for Democrat whistleblowers, unless there's evidence to the contrary, right? So I understand people's hesitation, but if you're going to go under whistleblower protection status, we have to assume that they're following it until they are proven otherwise. That's the power of innocent until proven guilty in the United States today, and it should be given to every American who is saying that the government is doing something. If we're going to embrace the whistleblower program in any way, shape, or form, which I have my doubts about the program, I believe you go through your chain of command. That's what you do. And if you don't, you're breaching the chain of command. And I don't agree necessarily with the whistleblower program. However, if we're going to embrace it and have it as a protected status, then that's exactly what it needs to be. Until these people are vetted or proven otherwise, then you either are in for a penny, in for a pound, or you back off on all of it and say that this program is no longer necessary because we truly believe in a chain of command process in the government and it needs to be fulfilled. It's worked for the military for a couple hundred years. I think we can do it for the FBI and other groups.
A very intense hearing. I thought the witnesses are actually very impressive guys. It seemed to me that it was, you have a combat.
Brenda, please let us know what happened at the school. Please, please, please tell us.
Veterans who had distinguished records, not only in the military, but in law enforcement up until very recently. And they have a credible story that the reason that they suddenly have blemished records is because the FBI has been politicized and they're pushing against it. I don't know that it helps the committee get that message across. Apparently, Marcus Allen did not want to sit with the Democrats, but was willing to sit with the Republicans. It's not that unusual for a witness to be willing to sit with one side of a dispute, but not the other. But it is unusual to have a testimonial transcript generated from that and have the other side both not present and then not give them a copy of what the testimony is. Mm-hmm. And
I haven't done exuberant amounts of cocaine this morning, so people are probably going to ask because I sound like, allergies. Morning allergies for me are horrendous. And usually I get up, I eat breakfast, then I go take a shower. I have not had a chance to do that this morning. I decided to get on live right away. So, I'm stuffy. So that's why. Get that guy away from our cocaine.
whether that was really worth it, because that seems to be what the Democratic
They
side.
have not given these guys whistleblower protection status. So that's the problem, is that they're not being given protected status. And that's where there's an issue here. Once again, if you're going to have a whistleblower program and people go through the process of applying for the whistleblower program, you shouldn't be able to pick and choose who is under status and not.
What the Democratic side is hammering on, the fact that they haven't been given this testimony, which, may not be that big of a deal.
And
one
just
way
a
or
point
the
on
other,
that,
and
I don't know all of the details, but one of the things that Jim Jordan, the congressman, the chairman from Ohio, said was that would be up to Mr. Allen to decide, and there was some reference to something that had happened with previous testimony that he says the Democrats inappropriately leaked, and that newspaper or news outlet then had to walk back. So we don't know what that is, and I agree with that. Let me turn it over to Bill just one more second. I just have a question, if you could help us understand, because over and over, the members on the Republican side were saying it's not right that whistleblowers at the FBI should have different rules as a whistleblower than the rest of the federal government. Why do they have a different set of rules for the FBI?
It's a good question.
So this, Dana, I think this goes to the heart of one of the things that we heard from one of the first members of on the Republican side who spoke about the fact that the FBI at a certain point in time, particularly after 9/11, kind of changed its character from being a law enforcement agency with a sort of intelligence sideline to being principally an intelligence agency. The difference between the FBI and the other agencies that we heard about, like the Secret Service, like DEA, I think was another one that was mentioned, is the FBI has two jobs. One is they're a law enforcement agency. And in that capacity, it's true that there isn't any principled reason why you would have a difference between the way that you treat FBI agents and other agents. But
Here's
the
the
other
caveat.
thing is, the other side of their mission is national security and foreign counterintelligence. That's not a law enforcement mission. It's not a criminal justice mission. It's a national security mission to support the president's executive responsibility to protect the United States. And for that reason, and because of all the national security and classified concerns that go into that, the FBI, it has always been thought, has to be subject to a different set.
It's not always been thought. It's predominantly after 9/11 where FBI's responsibility expanded into international type affairs and national security affairs. The FBI was used and leveraged by Reagan differently than anyone else. Now, Hoover used them in more of a national level against the United States. And then with the Patriot Act, obviously the FBI's role expanded into monitoring not just national, but international targets. It wasn't always this way. This was really muddied between John F. Kennedy and then up to Reagan. The FBI was used predominantly for national, federal level type stuff and kind of reorganized after Hoover. When Reagan got involved, the FBI was used in an international standpoint and was used as an extension of the CIA, specifically against Russia and the Politburo and KGB and communist threat that Russia posed. And there was a giant war between the FBI and the Politburo / funded through the KGB. And there was a massive scale of conflict between those two agencies. The amount of deaths, the amount of espionage that took place between those was extensive, in the thousands, and truly became a private war between intelligence apparatuses for the Russian government, Cuba, Turkey, the United States, England, and MI6, Mossad, and a few other secondary type intelligence agencies that weren't in it as much, but were also utilized because Russia was dabbling in the Middle East as well as the United States, in the Congo, in South America, in Cuba. So this was definitely a global intelligence war between the two. When 9/11 took place, the expanded responsibility of the Patriot Act and the sheer amount of intel collection that happened from a digital standpoint, an email standpoint, from chat IRCs and things of that effect, expanded into the CIA's role of not just international spying, but domestic. That crossed the line with provisions that were put in place once the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, came out of World War II with Wild Bill Donovan, when Kennedy essentially fired like 46 different intelligence officials, including Alan Dulles from the CIA, and put limitations on domestic operations for the CIA, restricted them to international only. When the Patriot Act took place, it created a situation where the FBI's responsibility had to move into domestic surveillance, but also take responsibility for some of that international surveillance. It changed the apparatus. It changed the mission in the AOR. So when you're listening to Andy McCarthy here, he's talking about the FBI has a multifaceted role to support the law in the United States based upon the executive branch, which is the president, of executing the laws and enforcing the laws of this land, but also their expanded responsibility for national security and running an international oversight onto intelligence gathering and filtering based upon how that impacts the domestic side of the United States. It's multifaceted. It muddies the line. It makes it very difficult to create lines of delineation between domestic and international collection. And this is the issue when it comes to whistleblower status for the FBI. It doesn't fucking matter. The only way that it should matter is in open testimony like this, is that you have to be very careful that closed door hearings and open sessions are separated in order to protect the overall integrity of the FBI and its mission. So all they have to do is have a closed door session, no cameras, nobody in the galley. It is simply the oversight committee who would be present, and these would be confidential closed door hearings with stuff that is based upon a national security perspective. And then anything that's domestic related, that's not national security or global security indicative, would be done in an open door session like this is today. So there's no reason they shouldn't have whistleblower status applied, but the lines are being muddied because they have a multifaceted mission. That's a very long explanation to what McCarthy's trying to say, but that's a little bit more in detail.
Which give the government more ability, that is the executive branch in particular, more ability to basically keep them quiet than the other agencies whose their roles are important, but they're just law enforcement roles.
We got a ton more questions. The things that strike me: Jim Jordan, politics is driving the decisions of the FBI. When Stephen Friends prepared testimony, he said the FBI is incentivized to work against the American people. And when Harriet Hageman, the Republican for Wyoming, said Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland are corrupt, she said it at least twice. So they're red hot in that hearing. Yeah. We'll get back to it. Andy, stand by. We've got some decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. It is a breaking news Thursday morning, include 2 cases on social media liability and
presidential nominees. Donald Trump at 50.
One president spent so much time trying to take down DeSantis, he lowered the expectations for DeSantis Hall, even though it's not that many months before we start voting in Iowa and New
Republicans, and able to this gap, and I can show you the Fox News poll, our most recent one of 2024 GOP presidential nominees.
See, this is when you're right, you're right. When you're not, you're not. It's interesting to see Nikki Haley at 6%. Vivek's sitting at 3%. I mean, he's not. Like I told you, he's not going to be considered a serious candidate. This really opens up some interesting numbers because Ron DeSantis at 21% is actually a huge number. I like Vivek too, but he doesn't have a chance. He'd be great on administration, right? But this really opens up the Ron DeSantis conversation. 21% is a huge number. This explains why Donald Trump has been attacking him. This is why the political action committees are running ads against DeSantis, even though he hasn't ran. And there's other political action committees that are not endorsed by DeSantis or Trump that are supporting DeSantis running, even though he's not running. He will run. I predicted 1 to 2 weeks about 5 days ago. That's when he was going to come out and announce. We'll see. It's getting close. He needs to announce. his numbers are actually fantastic. 21% is a huge number for not announcing, not doing rallies, not getting out there and doing speeches, not actually going after policy from a national sense, being picked up by all media. This is a scary number for Trump. 21%. He's climbing. He was sitting at 14%, now 21%. And honestly, Trump giving him attention is the thing I said was the worst thing that he could do. Is that when you are the front runner, when you have, essentially a mandate from Republicans to run, and then you start recognizing Ron DeSantis and attacking him and attacking his policies, and Ron DeSantis is the one going after Disney, going after CRT, going after the 1619 Project, going after protecting our children and parents' rights, and you're attacking him, it puts you in a position that makes your comments seem to be kind of hallowed, and where Trump should be praising DeSantis, in my opinion, is, listen, this is the guy that I worked with. This is the guy that I put forward. Look at what DeSantis is doing in Florida. Can you imagine what it would look like if Ron DeSantis and I could work together? And honestly, him running, I think it's a good thing. I welcome it. I welcome the up and coming stars of the Republican Party. I welcome Nikki Haley. I welcome Ron DeSantis. And the reason why is because I can't be here forever. So after I win over the next 4 years, I would love to hand them the baton. What would even be better than having Ron DeSantis be my vice president, or Ron DeSantis and I working together on policy as he remains governor? Whatever it is, that would be political fodder that everyone would be like, oh, wow, look at Trump. He's being magnanimous. He's building up the Republican Party for next. It's not his desire. It makes me concerned that DeSantis is sitting at 21%, because this is a clear sign that America has a palate for something else. Now, whether you think Ron DeSantis can win or not, I will tell you with absolutely no equivocation, if Donald Trump does not run, Ron DeSantis will be the next president of the United States. If he decides to run, he'll beat Joe Biden hands down 10 ways to Sunday. DeSantis has the polish, he has the panache, he has the ability to have a conversation. He will get the right vice president, which will more than likely be Nikki Haley, and he'll crush. He'll fucking crush. And I will crush for him. I will shill for him for free. And I'll shill for Donald Trump for free too. But what I'm telling you is that America is saying, not so fast, Donald. We may not like a lot of the rhetoric that you say. And even though you had a very good conversation on CNN, at some points you mucked and dropped the football in a lot of those points. And you kept talking about the stolen election. You kept talking about January 6th. That doesn't put food on America's table. We don't give a shit. 2020 is over. You're never going to win that. They're never going to fix that. What we have to look at is 2024. And you need to talk about the policies. You need to be nailing Biden on the deficit and the shutdown that could happen with the government. Because why? Well, because Americans are worried about that. And he has the football. And just as much as the shutdown loomed over Trump's head and happened to Obama, and it negatively impacted him, that's what we're worried about. Some people will say, I will vote for Mike Pence. I'll tell you, it's a wasted vote. Mike Pence doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. If Mike Pence was going to win at any time, it would have been in 2016. And they didn't want him then, and America doesn't want him now. Even though I have defended Mike Pence fervently in regards to Trump's accusations of him being a traitor, and that in Article 2 that he overall could have overturned the election, which is complete bullshit. He could not. Why would the Constitution give power for the Vice President of the United States to remain in power by overthrowing the will of the people? Give me a fucking break. The Constitution does not say that. Anyone who says it does is a complete liar. Okay, dude, we got it. You're voting for Mike Pence. That's 3 times. Yes, we understand. Thank you. I'm addressing you right now. If you say it again, I'm going to ban you out of spite. I get that you're voting for Mike Pence. Great. We understand. You're voting for Mike Pence. Thank you for saying it 3 times. The thing I'm trying to tell you is that America doesn't want Mike Pence. Mike Pence is on the side of religious zealot at times. He has a very stoic demeanor that I like and I appreciate in a VP. I love how he backed up Donald Trump. I love how he always towed the line. I love how he stood by him during the grab him by the pussy scandal. I love how he towed the line during COVID. I think Mike Pence was a masterful debater and destroyed Tim Kaine and destroyed Kamala Harris. And I think he was an excellent VP. He cannot lead this country. His vision, he is a Republican face, and that's what he does. I do not like Mike Pence personally. I think he is an archaic dinosaur of an old Republican Party that doesn't exist, that has remnants of 2014 Tea Party patriots after it was purchased by the Koch brothers. He reminds me of a Paul Ryan. He reminds me of a Michelle Bachmann. I don't take him seriously, and I don't think he'll even be a blip on the radar. He's trying to sell his book. Vivek Ramaswamy, he is a fantastic, intelligent mind. I believe he has a lot of future here. He does not have the staying power. He doesn't have the financial backing. This will come down to Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, and Nikki Haley will bring up third. That is, I've been saying this for almost 3 years. DeSantis will most assuredly not be a VP for Donald Trump. I would be shocked. I believe it comes down to this. Donald Trump will run and probably pick a person like Nikki Haley. She brings in the suburban wife's vote. She's extremely respected from an international standpoint, and it gives Trump the demographic he doesn't have, women. And also minority women, because she is a minority. So it's a smart move for him. Plus, she's challenged him in the past, and she'll keep him real. She's not Mike Pence. She won't be a yes person. She'll challenge Donald Trump. She'll make him sweat a little bit. Good. That's what he needs. And it shows a little bit of contrition that he has a woman who wants to run next to him. It's a fantastic choice. Or Donald Trump will do what's right and see that the numbers show that he is unelectable, and he'll stand down. And he will ultimately hand it off to DeSantis to run now instead of 2028. I don't know if Donald Trump has that within him to do that. Carrie Lake is VP. Carrie Lake can't even win governor. How the hell is she going to be a VP? America does not want Carrie Lake as a vice president. She won't get it. You don't want two Trumps in office. Why do you want the female version of Trump in office? Carrie Lake can't even win governor. It was stolen from her. Okay, well, when she proves that in the court of law, I'll go ahead and say that. Until then, she just seems like a crybaby, just like Stacey Abrams from Georgia. And I'll say it to Carrie Lake, and she may not like that. I've defended Carrie Lake on plenty of times. I like her as a person. I like her politics. I like her tenacity. I love how sharp she is, and I think she's a looker. But I think she should have conceded a long time ago. That's what I think. She can't even win in Arizona. So I'm sorry. No. I wish Carrie Lake was here. You know what she would probably say? She would probably rip into me. But at least I'm going to tell her the truth. I think she's coming off like a petulant child. Every single case gets struck down. Now they're doing these signatures, and everybody's an expert. These volunteers who do these signatures, well, it doesn't prove anything. Show me thousands of votes that were actually changed based upon these signatures or weren't verified. Because if you understand, that's already baked into the results. Because if they weren't verifying signatures for one side, they were most assuredly not verifying signatures for the other side. It's baked in. We need to stop this bullshit. I didn't win, or I won. I won. It was me. It was taken from me. Either we trust in our election system or we don't. And if we don't trust in the election system, then 2016 was an illegitimate president in Donald Trump because Democrats said it was stolen. All right, well, let's go ahead and move over here and say, well, what about 2020? Well, that was stolen too because Trump didn't win, and therefore Biden stole it. Okay, all right, fine. Well, what about the midterms? 17 of Donald Trump's candidates in the swing states, he's 0-17, including Carrie Lake. They all lost. Why? Well, they were all talking about January 6th and stolen elections before they even happened. Majewski up in Ohio was a stolen valor douchebag. You got fucking Dr. Oz running against Fetterman Lurch, and he couldn't win because it's Dr. Oz who's more liberal than anybody. It's not about trusting. Either you do or you don't. So if you trust in it, then you have to go ahead and say that you trust the whole thing. If you don't trust in it, then you don't. Which one is it? Do you only trust it when Republicans win? Or do you question it only when Republicans lose? That's my point. And nobody seems to want to answer that question. Well, they're okay with Governor Youngkin in Virginia. That's okay. They're okay with Eli Cray winning in District 1 in Arizona. Well, that's okay. They're okay for flipping Ohio. They're okay for flipping 27 out of 29 positions in Florida. Well, that's okay. They're okay when Kemp wins in Georgia. Well, that's okay. But we don't trust it everywhere else? Why is that? It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? It's kind of stupid to say, well, I trust it in some places, but I don't trust it in others. Oh, well, I trust that. Well, let's see what happened with 2016. What happened with 2020? How come we gained seats in the Senate? How come we gained seats in the House and overtook the House in 2022? You know, Republicans got the House, you know. Do you trust that? Well, how come you trust that, but you don't trust the other elections? Do you understand on both sides it's a bunch of idiots and ignoramuses and you need to stop? Either you trust the election process or you don't. And you trust it for all or you trust it for none. That's the way this works. In for a penny, in for a pound. Now, I'm not telling you to trust the election process. You cannot trust it. That's fine. You may do that. But you better not trust any of it. What happens in 2024? What are we talking about? Wow, when did this happen? What happened? What did I miss? Did y'all know Laura Ingraham was fired from Fox News? Who's next? When? See, this came across last night and somebody said she was fired. Nope. 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 No news. She wasn't fired from Fox News. So I don't know why people keep saying that. I said it on my show last night because someone said it. 3 people said it. And then I went and researched it. And unless it would happen like literally right now, it's nowhere in the ether. American News reported. Is this American News Freedom Patriot reported it? A lot of people reported it yesterday. And it wasn't true. Fox completely, unequivocally denied it last night. Anyway, either you trust the election or you don't. And if you're going to sit here and say that some states do it right and others don't, but it's only the states that lose, well, then I've got a bone to pick. I'm going to take some issue because 2016, there were a lot of states that voted for Donald Trump that didn't in 2020. And you completely accepted the results in 2016. So why not? Oh, it changed. It changed. Why? So it wasn't for Obama. It wasn't rigged for Obama for his 8 years. It wasn't rigged in 2000 for George Bush. It wasn't rigged for the House of Representatives in 2022 when we took it back over. It wasn't rigged in Virginia for Glenn Youngkin. Folks, you might just want to consider that the American people don't like bullshit. And they don't want to hear from Carrie Lake that she wouldn't accept the election results unless she won. And they simply voted her out in the sense that she never got in. She's liked. I like her. If Carrie Lake was on the show, I would love to talk to her, but I would also tell her, why wouldn't you accept the results so you can do something bigger and more profound? You have a national presence. Do you understand what you could do with your voice? Why are you worried about a governorship? Move on. Hobbs got it. Arizona will flip back red soon enough, but you're not the one. Why don't you worry about a national position? Because I think she would be fantastic on a Trump presidency and administration. I think she would be a great on a DeSantis administration. But she's tying herself to Trump politics. Do you guys understand that Trump is not going to be in politics after 2024? He may win the presidency, so he's going to be there till 2028. But if he doesn't win, he will be a person who is utilized by the Republican Party, maybe sometimes, depending upon his legal issues. And ultimately, most people will detach themselves from his coattails. We've already seen a lot of people do it, and they're doing it now. It's not Trump's party. It is the conservative Republican Party, and it has a lot of problems. It has a lot of issues, and the Uniparty is a viable threat to the Republican conservative movement. And we have a lot to weed out. But it's not Trump's party. It never was Trump's party. Trump was our candidate. But Trump leaving politics doesn't mean the Republican and conservative movement stops in the United States. It has changed forms. It is very different than it was in 1940, than it is from 1960 to 1980 to 1984 till 2000, 2001 to 2008 to 2014 to 2020 to 2024. The Republican Party has changed so much over that time, and it's now starting to move back to its roots, focusing on abortion, Second Amendment rights, the Constitution. This is the Republican Party that I can get behind. What I don't get behind is forcing religious views on everybody and saying that in order to come to our umbrella, you have to fit a certain type of person. You have to be a certain type of color. You have to be a certain type of religion. And that was the Republican Party from 2008 to 2014. And I didn't recognize it. I didn't fucking vote for it. And I never want to see it again, because that was overtaken by the Tea Party. Not the good Tea Party, the Tea Party that was purchased by the Koch brothers. Republicans have changed its face many times, and Democrats have changed its face many times. They were not for LGBTQ. They were not for open borders. These people were not zealots when it came to identity politics. In fact, liberals used to be fairly rational. I wish they would come back to the middle. They have moved so far left that I don't even recognize the party anymore. Remember this, that the candidate is not forever. The candidate's legacy may be, but the candidate themselves does not represent the party. They are not ideologues. They are not people we should emulate. They are not people we should admire. They represent us, and they have a fucking job to do. Their job is to represent the constituents of these United States. They're not to represent their own pockets and bank accounts and self-interest. And if they do that, they need to be removed and never, ever run for office again. I'm tired of turning politicians into deities. Donald Trump is not a god. He was not appointed by God. He was not annotated by God. He is a man. And as a man, he is a sinner. And he has flaws and he has strengths. And his strengths have been very strong for policy. And his flaws have been very flawed when it comes to character and personality. And he has made some bad choices. He is not a god. Carrie Lake is not a god. Joe Biden is certainly not a god. We need to stop treating politicians like celebrities and treat them like they are hired help. We'll see if the vote is over yet. If not, I'll probably pop smoke and bring it back on tonight.
But look, again, the laptop class sounds great.
More. Maybe. Because a lot of them are leaving.
Should avoid the temptation.
Hey, look at that.
Republican Senator Rand Paul of the great state of Kentucky, ranking member on Senate Homeland Security Committee, is in focus. First, we will go to David Spunt at the Justice Department, the DOJ, the boss of the FBI.
Congress sent to Republicans and Democrats explain
21, and that allegation is based on unsubstantiated.
Congress sent to Republicans and Democrats explaining why these men lost their security clearances.
The FBI suspended my security clearance, accusing me of actually being disloyal to my country. This outrageous and insulting accusation is based on unsubstantiated accusations that I hold conspiratorial views regarding the events of January 6, 2021, and that I allegedly sympathize with criminal conduct. I do not.
According to Marcus Allen's FBI file, as one example, on September 29, 2021, Allen sent an email using his FBI email account to multiple colleagues that contained links to websites and urged recipients to, quote, exercise extreme caution and discretion in pursuit of any investigative inquiries or leads pertaining to the events of January 6th. Harris, Stephen Friend is another witness who says his name has been damaged by the Bureau. Listen.
You may think I'm a political partisan. You may think I am a grifter. You may think I'm a conspiracy theorist. It does not matter. Simply put, this committee should avoid the temptation to impugn the character and the motivations of the messengers seated before you.
But according to his FBI file, on September 3rd of last year, Friend entered FBI space and downloaded documents from FBI computer systems to an unauthorized removable flash drive. The FBI then required Mr. Friend to attend a security awareness briefing regarding his actions, but he refused to do so. The file says he also gave an interview with Russian government state television, and he was not approved to do so. But these whistleblowers say they were retaliated against. The hearing continues momentarily. Harris.
David Spunt, thank you for getting us started.
So, of course, okay, so I want to be clear on this. These whistleblowers, I don't know anything about them. And I don't know whether I agree with what they're saying or disagree with what they're saying. What I do think is that they should be heard. If these things are true and they were removed for viable reason, well, that doesn't necessarily discredit everything they're saying. If they're saying that the DOJ is weaponized and that they're using political theater to remove agents who don't necessarily agree with the narrative, well, then it would make sense that they would find any reason to get rid of them. However, I also understand that there are two sides to every story, and a disgruntled employee is about as common as having an employee to begin with. Anytime anyone leaves a job, whether it's by like the job that I just left, I'm not happy with those guys, even though I absolutely love them. And I love both of them and their families, and I want them to succeed. I'm pissed off at both of those owners for letting me go. Not happy with them. But I'm sure there's things that I did that I need to be held accountable for. But there's also outside influences that took place, financial, losing money, not being able to afford, where my value no longer became a necessity. And that's it. Has nothing to do with one single solution, whether A, I was wronged or they were right. It's a multifaceted approach. I could have created more value in myself. They could be a little bit more sensitive that downtimes happen and prepared properly with their money and their savings to ensure that I'm protected. If I truly am a part of their family, they should have kept me on at maybe a diminished salary, but still made that offer and stuck to it. There's many situations. So what could be true is that, yes, this guy used a USB drive to take documents or did a Russian interview with a Russian media outlet without approval. Okay, that definitely he needs to be held accountable. But also, which could be true, is that what he is saying is accurate. So just because we watch Perry Mason and Murder, She Wrote and CSI, where they get a witness up on the stand and they try to discredit him for something that happened when he was 18 years old, or something that he said in a thesis in college, and somehow that disproves his testimony, is completely fabricated and false. In fact, most times that stuff becomes inadmissible. A character witness doesn't necessarily need to have be free of impunity. They need to be credible based upon what they're testifying. Now, if there's something where they have previously testified on something that was incorrect or false, well, then that's predicated upon the fact that impacts their current testimony, because in the past they have lied. So just because some of these FBI officials have a record of doing things that we may say, oh, well, that doesn't seem right. What you're saying then is that the impossible standard is that every single witness must have be free of all impunity, free of all mistake, and have never any moments of learning or opportunities is an unreasonable expectation. In fact, you will find no such person exists. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things outside of the confines of the rules and regulations at one point. The old adage, if you go digging for trash, you will find it. And I can tell you from a corporate person who has been charged of thousands of employees, there have been times that my superiors come to me and say, go find something. We have reason to terminate this person based upon complaints and employee complaints, but we don't have enough evidence to follow the state rules and regulations. So I want you to go do an audit and I want you to find something. Maybe they're mishandling credit cards. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're falsifying customers signing up for a program that's rated and commissioned. Maybe they're sleeping with an employee. Whatever it is, find something and go dig and go get it. And I'm not going to lie, I've done it. If you go digging for trash, you'll find it. And in any position that I have held, from a host of a small-time restaurant part-time or an executive vice president level, there are multiple things that I could have been found out for that would get me terminated, and that is everybody. Well, okay, on your T&E, I see you missed a half a mile here on your expense for mileage, and you claimed a half mile and rounded up. Is that true? Yes. Well, that's fraud. You're fired. And you're like, wait a second, hold on a second, time out. Those are the type of things I'm talking about. Things that are infinitesimal, things that nobody watches for, that everybody does. But if you want to go and read the policies for major corporations and handbooks that are 72 pages long, that are written in lawyer speak, and tell me that every single thing you've done every single day at your place of employment has been above board and you have never broken a policy, even though you don't know the policy exists, you're insane. The same thing holds true for government. So if you have some people who are you're questioning and you're wondering and you're not liking what they're doing, you can go through the rule book and find things that they're doing that are outside the purview of the rules and regulations. And if you do, you have a quantifiable and qualitative reason to fire them. And then you can use that when they whistleblow and say, well, look at this. They've got a history of, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily mean everything they're saying isn't true. It certainly brings up a question about their credibility, or a possible question about their credibility. But that's what's happening here. Because if they have the information based upon what they did wrong, then they have the frickin' information on what they're claiming. And the Democrats are choosing to focus on things that were procedural that they did wrong and not addressing what they're claiming. That's a red herring. And they're distracting from the actual testimony in order to destroy their credibility. And that should speak volumes, because that's what they're claiming the FBI is doing, and the Democrats are following suit. Don't you see? That happened to my mom after she had an accident and permanently disabled her, making it nearly impossible for her to do her job, and she was working for the Veterans Administration. Matt, Brenda updated us in the school situation. It was the threat made because of a teenage breakup. The situation has been resolved. No one hurt. Thank God. Good. All right, let's listen to this. Hopefully we've got enough time. And if not, I'm going to go.
Senator Rand Paul, the top Republican on the Senate Homeland Security Committee and member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Great to have you in focus today.
Good morning.
There's been a lot to go on in that hearing across chamber from you. I would imagine everybody's watching it. Your top line thoughts.
You know, as I travel the country and I meet people come up to me every day and they are worried that there's two sets of justice. That, you know, for Paul Manafort, you go to jail for life. For Hunter Biden, there's never even an indictment. So people are very, very concerned. We give our law enforcement, particularly.
Can I just say that Harris Faulkner looks particularly beautiful today? And she always looks good, but she's put a little bit more amber highlights in her hair. And done her eyes a little bit differently. She's now using more eyeliner underneath and darkening her upper portion of her eye, and she looks good. I notice these things, folks, and I just want to say Harris Faulkner looks like $1 million. I think she is a gorgeous African-American lady and smart to boot. There you go.
Our intelligence agency, they have the tools to look into every aspect of our life, to thoroughly go where no one.
Did I mention that I think Harris Faulkner looks great today?
Go, and they need to be unbiased. It needs to be based on probable cause on the Constitution. But it turns out we learned that in the Trump administration and the Trump campaign they went after, they didn't even use the Constitution. They used what's called the FISA, or Foreign Intelligence Court, which doesn't have to obey the Constitution. And
oh, my wife is watching. Look at that. I got an eye roll. I thought you were in the shower, Liv. Damn it. I thought I was going to get away with one there. Whoops.
As a lower standard than the Fourth Amendment. So this is very, very worrisome. I think people are upset by it. And I frankly think the hearings are a good idea.
So what are you learning about these whistleblowers and their alleged plight that maybe is somewhat surprising to you?
Whoops.
And one of the things I would ask you to point to is this idea that they get treated differently than whistleblowers per other agencies in one single federal government.
Yeah, I think that's true. Typically, the left has been receptive and open to whistleblowers. I, as a conservative, am open and
yeah, Dottie, she seems smart too. Yeah, whatever.
open and would like to hear from whistleblowers because I think they can tell us about malfeasance within government. In fact, the most famous whistleblower in the COVID investigation was a major who released a
Amber
research
highlights,
document that said that the Chinese, with our help, were actually trying to develop the virus that looked suspiciously like what COVID-19 became. And that was a blockbuster and actually had a lot of people rethinking whether the virus came from a lab. So whistleblowers are incredibly important. and we should hear from them. But the weaponization of the FBI policing speech at Twitter, the FBI paying $3 million to Twitter to take down constitutionally protected speech, these are things that have
Harris Faulkner may make pot pie. I don't think she does. So Olivia has the upper hand on that one.
to be evaluated. My hope is that at some point in
All
time,
right, let's get to this.
are looking for and then not be afraid like this now.
Prescribed CG.
I always recommend says don't forget
across the border. So it's called.
Remember, you were deploying like 10,000 Texas National Guards. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if this. I'm going to do one more thing and see if it's on Fox News Digital, because they may not continue this. So let me. I'm going to see if it's on here real quick, and then if not, we're going to pop smoke. We've got a baseball game tonight. Sox are playing the Rockies, I believe. My son, they are 8-0-1. They're undefeated. They're number one in their league. They're crushing it. They are just crushing it. And I'm hoping that continues. I'm going to keep Fubo on pause, and I'm going to bring over Fox as it's coming on. Let's see if it's broken up.
Clerks will call the roll.
Of course it is. Let me open up a Chrome window, because Google Chrome does not participate in Apple's silencing of people. We're going to have a commercial now for 30 seconds. Ridiculous. All right, let's let this open up, and then you don't get to see a commercial. I'm not going to allow you to see it. And the whistleblower hearing is coming back on right now. 30-second ads, really, Facebook and are really Fox News? Come on. You guys must be desperate for advertising, I would assume, since you have let go of Tucker Carlson. Here it is.
Garcia.
no.
Ms. Garcia votes no. Mr. Goldman.
No.
Mr. Goldman votes no.
Clerk will report.
Wonder what they were voting on. Maybe to suspend the
Mr.
hearing?
Chairman, there are 8 ayes and 5 noes.
Motion to table is approved. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Boyle, have you publicly shared what you discussed with Chairman Jordan's staff before today? It says yes or no.
Did I publicly do what?
Share, like
With whom?
I don't like this woman.
with
Just
the
FYI.
public.
About which part of my testimony?
Any of your testimony, sir, that you shared with Jordan's staff, have you shared that with the public or this committee? It's a yes or no, sir. It's really not that hard.
I don't believe so.
You don't believe that, so, okay. And during your transcribed interview on February 10th, did you explain to the committee counsel the content of what you had previously shared with Chairman Jordan's staff?
To some degree, regarding the questions that were asked on that day.
To some
Look at
degree,
that
is
product placement for
is
Deer
yes?
Park water.
Yes, to some degree.
Okay, but you shared it only with the lawyers.
Mr. Gates was present for part of that testimony as well.
Okay. So the only people who know the wrongdoing you claim to have uncovered at the FBI, to your knowledge, are Chairman Jordan's staff, Congressman Estes, and maybe now Congressman Gates?
I also shared some of my disclosures with my chain of command prior to coming
No,
to
I'm talking
Congress.
about your testimony here today in this committee.
Right, that includes some of what I had
And America.
provided to my chain of command as well.
Well, that's not the question. So the FBI.
Well, nobody knows what the question is, lady, because you're fucking being circumspect.
You know if
Sorry.
the security clearance suspension decision is still under adjudication with the FBI?
An
Oddly
ass.
enough, I received an email last week from the FBI.
Have you shared this testimony with anyone? Well, besides the frickin' 7 million people who are watching, no.
FBI attempting
Stupid
to
question.
schedule an interview with me for tomorrow, which I find is no coincidence heading into the hearing today. But prior to that
So it's still
email,
being adjudicated. The answer is yes.
prior to that email, I had not.
All right, so it's
been
still
aware.
being adjudicated, but in her April 24th transcribed interview, Executive Assistant Director Moore told us that when Mr. Jordan's counsel asked you about your case, that she, quote, is not allowed to discuss any ongoing security investigations. So you're still being investigated. So neither you nor the FBI can help us understand what information you shared and when you shared it.
Well, I have provided that information to members of this subcommittee who I believe will take it
Well,
seriously.
no, you've submitted it to the chairman and the committee's staff. But as you've been hearing this morning, a lot of that, most of that, we have not seen as Democrats. It's not been shared. It's not been shared pursuant to the laws.
That has nothing to do with him. It's not his fault.
Shared, just even in keeping with a notion of fairness. You know, in any proceeding like this.
Well, in notion of fairness, you claim that
We
we
don't
aren't
know what was
whistleblowers.
disclosed. The committee counsel hasn't had the opportunity to assess the information you shared with Jim Jordan's staff.
So
Yet
let me just put a bow on this for you. Miss Garcia, Ms. I wonder why she's not married. Go figure. Oh. Okay. They don't give whistleblower status to these guys and say you're not whistleblowers, which opens up the ability to subpoena, to open up testimony, to affidavits, to call witnesses, to open up investigations and protection status for these guys. They don't authorize those, and then they chastise them when they go to the Republican side and give them information, and then they say, well, you didn't provide anything. So you don't give them the protection to go outside of their chain of command to discuss things that we've already discussed that are domestic responsibilities as far as law, and then international responsibility from collecting intelligence assets and national security, which would be a violation, and you would ultimately try somebody like they're trying the asshat who, the Air National Guardsman who released open IRC channel and gaming channel intelligence about Ukraine, which would be very similar to that. It may not be as blatant as that, but it's still a breach of security. And you're telling him to breach security and give you information that's under investigation and that is considered to be sensitive in nature, at least from the lowest sense of the word. And you won't provide him the protection to do that, which is the proper channel on how to do that. And then you chastise him for it because you won't give him that status and then chastise him for not doing it. Well, she's a liberal.
we are hearing on the matter, there's been no transparency, no real effort to inform. It's just a partisan political stunt that is more interested in attacking the FBI than helping whistleblowers.
Well, that's
In
a stretch.
Texas, we would just say that this is just a lot of hot air blowing here, and it ain't a whistleblower. By having this hearing before the majority makes even basic information about your claims available to us, Chairman Jordan is doing us all a disfavor. We're meeting without knowing. In his opening remarks, he said that he had brought you here to have you tell us what you have seen and what you had witnessed. Yet, we really still don't know because you haven't told us anything. I went through your whole witness statement, and there's nothing in there about what you saw or what you heard.
That's not true. That's not true.
It's just a bio
That's
and
false.
your political statements. I read the whole thing, sir.
That's false.
So by having this hearing before us today, the majority makes even basic information about your claims not available to us. So Chairman Jordan is just doing us all a disservice. He's doing the
You've already
minority
said
a
this. You
disservice
just
by
read
not
it,
allowing
Nutter.
us to vet your claims, to be able to adequately ask you questions. Frankly, he's doing you a disservice, sir, by all the lights and cameras before his claims have even been examined. More than that, this hearing is an insult to the brave whistleblowers out there who do risk their careers for the good of their country. This circus of unvetted secret accusations puts at risk the critical role whistleblowers play in holding the powerful accountable. Most whistleblowers aren't interested in being political pawns in congressional Republicans' games. Playing politics is holding up this scheme as whistleblowers will make other public servants fearful of coming forward out of fear.
All right, let me
they'll just be
decipher for
used.
you. You're not whistleblowing for the Democrats, so therefore everything you say is a political game and a pawn. There you go. I just solved it for you. That's what she's saying. So what you're doing is discrediting every whistleblower. And once again, it's just like when I challenged Republicans about the stolen election and the integrity of the vote. If you stand by some of the results and don't stand by the others, then essentially you don't care about the integrity of the election. You care that you lost. This is a prime example. You don't care about whistleblowers. You only care about when whistleblowers have something that says that supports your narrative. And when it goes against your narrative, they're a bunch of lying political hacks. Which one is it? Either we care about whistleblowers or we don't. Either we care about children and want to stop gun violence, or we don't by going ahead and aborting 67 million babies. Which one is it? You know, it's really interesting. Sometimes I wonder if the Bible was written by Democrats, because there is a whole bunch of contradictions and oxymorons inside the Bible at times, because it's written by man. We understand that, and it's conveyed from God, and it's been written multiple times. But Democrats seem to go ahead and contradict themselves on just about everything. The hypocrisy is limitless when it comes to them. This is a perfect example. You're not on our side. Well, are you a Republican or Democrat? I'm a Republican. Oh, well, then you're not a whistleblower. You're a shill. Oh, well, you're a Democrat? What are you going to say? That? Oh, well, I like that. So now you're a whistleblower. This lady is a piece of shit.
Whistleblowers serve an important purpose in this country. They're often brave individuals who help root out corruption and make our democracy stronger. In fact, just this last February, whistleblowers who have been fired by...
So let me get this straight. Okay, hold on. There's not enough information for you to take him seriously, but there is not... the lack of information is enough for you to go ahead and destroy his credibility? So here we go. Here we go with hypocrisy. There's either enough information for you to take him seriously, or there's not for you not to take him seriously. Don't you understand? Don't you see? I would not let these people talk. She would not talk over me. I would stand up and shout and say, you're not going to make a claim against my character and not have me speak. This is not for you. You can ask questions, but you're making a political statement. You're accusing me of making political statements, yet I'm not. In fact, let's go ahead and reference my interview, and I will tell you and show you the statements that I made that you're saying don't exist. Either there's enough information for you to make a credible decision based upon his comments, or there's not enough for you to condemn him. That's not the way this works. So what she's saying is, I've already made up my mind because there's not enough information here that's been that has been exposed for me to disseminate and process and articulate a viable stance on this whole thing. But it's certainly enough to condemn you. Bullshit.
And in retaliation for accusing him of crimes, came to a settlement with the Attorney General.
Yeah, you're expired. Shut up, Garcia.
He had to
Shut up, Garcia. Shut up. Your time's expired.
Now recognizes the gentleman from California.
The gentlelady, this is my time. I've been recognized. Thank you. Mr. O'Boyle, is it true that you have 157 pages of questions that were asked you on a bipartisan basis that are in the record?
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Mr. Friend, isn't it true that for those several hours you accumulated 198 pages of Q&A, half of the time being yielded to the Democrats for your interview?
Yes.
I yield time to the chairman.
Someone needs to tell the Democrats, I think, John, someone needs to tell the Democrats you came and talked to this committee because you're a whistleblower. Isn't that right, Mr. Levitt?
Yes, sir.
That's exactly how it works.
May I take a moment to address this idea that these aren't whistleblowers?
Sure.
The law.
You need to educate the members on the other side of the dais here.
I don't need educating.
Yeah, you do.
Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Chairman,
lady.
This is my
You do.
time.
I do not
Let's
need
stop
to
the
be-
clock.
Oh, yeah, you do.
I am a lawyer just like this gentleman is. I too have read the law. We just have a big
Not your
difference
time.
of
The time
opinion in
belongs.
exactly
The time belongs
what
to
he
me,
says and
Mr.
what I
Levitt.
say.
As Mr. Levitt has been asked
You
a
need
question.
to stop demeaning your
The
colleagues.
whistleblower
Shut up.
protect protected activity, right? One
It's
doesn't
okay for
have
you to
be
demean the
retaliated
witnesses.
against in order to be a whistleblower, right? We all agree that's
I'm sorry. I interrupted him. Sorry.
not the way that it should happen. And what's being discussed today is that you're not a whistleblower unless you both share this engage in protect activity and then are retaliated against and then go through this process. The Department of Justice Inspector General is currently investigating the claims of Mr. Friend and Mr. Allen. That's exactly what, I don't know what perfect whistleblower there would be, but if they
That's
did
what I
that,
just said.
these are the steps they would take. And so by this definition, they're not considered a whistleblower for
Mr.
years.
Boyle,
I should be
you
a
went
lawyer.
up your chain of command with your concerns. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I initially started with them, and those initial complaints fell on deaf ears.
Then you came to the House Judiciary Committee with those concerns. Is that right?
After going to my local congressman, then I came to the judiciary.
Exactly like the law prescribes for you to do when you see something that is wrong. You did that. So did Mr. Friend. So did Mr. Allen. I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Levin, briefly, am I correct that starting with a resolution in 1778, whistleblowers have been recognized by our government, by our Congress, and that's been amended again in 78, in 84, and 94, and the most recent one in 2012 passed unanimously in this House. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We recognize whistleblowers for their patriotic duty.
You know what's amazing is when I authored the 2012, along with Mr. Jordan and others, there wasn't any question but that we wanted to better protect whistleblowers' ability to come to us with what they believed was accurate information. Isn't?
So I'm just letting you know, first of all, this guy's airborne, ex-Army. Here's the thing. What the Democrats are doing right now is they are trying, first of all, it's 11:30. Lunch hour is happening now. So there are going to be millions of people tuning in over the next 3 hours into this. This is prime time, second prime time for Fox. The Democrats are strategically placing these questions to detract and change the topic. If I was Issa, if I was any of these guys, I would simply say, we're not going to entertain these conversations with the Democrats. The Democrats don't take this seriously. They have no desire to take this seriously. The only thing that they're trying to do is distract so that people watching cannot hear what they need to hear. So we're going to move on from this. And every time they come in and try to distract from the conversation, simply stop taking the bait and move on from it. The lawyer just discredited them. Now we don't need showboating from the politicians to discredit the Democrats. This is what gets these damn hearings into the quagmire and the rabbit hole. Garcia was just blown apart by that lawyer. They have personal testimony that they followed the process of whistleblower status. Everyone who heard and listened to that knows that, unless they're a shill. Move on. Seriously.
The belief of accurate information the basis?
Yes, reasonable belief.
So is there any question but that people can have a reasonable belief, for example, that going after everyone who came in on January 6th on a bus and getting their financial records from Bank of America would be inappropriate, and getting their gun purchases for their entire lives would be inappropriate? Isn't there a reasonable belief that that might not be appropriate to do and necessary?
Yes, we believe disclosing that was protected.
So people have made appropriate statements, including about January 6th and some excesses that occurred afterwards in the investigation that violated people's constitutional right to privacy, correct?
Yes.
So here we have people who are talking about MAGA and 2020, January 6th, but in fact, they're missing the point. Each of these whistleblowers came forward with what is clearly protected disclosure, and they've had it systematically released, and they've been systematically treated in a way after they came forward that looks like, smells like, and including so-called mistakes, represents retaliation. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why the Inspector General opened investigations into these disclosures.
So as we sit here today, we've missed one important point, haven't we? That each of these individuals came to the committee with valid claims that at least need to be investigated of wrongdoing by our premier law enforcement organization.
Yes, and Congress protects those disclosures.
And as we sit here today, each of these individuals has been stripped of his clearance, stripped of his ability to work, and stripped of his pay. In your background and history, have you ever seen as straightforward a retaliation as current employees being denied their ability to work, their pay, and their benefits after they've made these kinds of claims?
No, and this is why there's a problem, because it's their clearance that was used as the means of retaliation.
Well, but also in the case of Mr. Allen, he just, and Mr. O'Boyle, they're just also not getting any work. I mean,
that's the point, yeah. Once they suspend your clearance, they also simultaneously put you on suspension. But that's not something that's appealable to the MSPB like a normal firing or demotion is.
If they were most other workers in government, they'd still have their jobs and be paid even if they weren't working, correct? This is uniquely a form of retribution they're able to do to law enforcement.
If you're suspended, yeah, it gets nuanced, but certainly with the clearance, that's a surefire way they can just get them out of the way when they want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley.
Thank you.
And I just would point out that I think it's the first time our sympathies are with your staff. I know you had that terrible incident that happened, so you'll get your full 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I really appreciate that. I must say, my friend from California, I don't know where this concern for whistleblowers and protecting whistleblowers was in the Ukraine episode in that perfect phone call Donald Trump had with President Zelensky, in which a whistleblower, Colonel Vindman, was in fact subsequently punished for reporting on that phone call, which led to the impeachment of the President of the United States. So wouldn't it be nice if we were consistent on our concerns about whistleblowers?
Would the gentleman
No,
yield?
I will not. Mr. Levitt, I have 5 minutes and I haven't got time. Mr. Levitt, you represent an organization, you're president of the organization called Empower Oversight, is that correct?
Yes.
And Empower Oversight represents an FBI agent or a former FBI agent, Mr. George Hill, whom we heard from a little earlier.
Well, no, actually. Mr. Hill did not have counsel for his transcribed interview, so my partner, Jason Foster, agreed to sit in on his interview just for procedural.
Okay, so you were sort of like a surrogate counsel, but not formally? You have no formal relationship with Mr. Hill?
Correct.
But why did you choose to help him in a deposition?
Well, I didn't. Again, my partner, Jason Foster, we were informed that he didn't have any counsel, and both of us have experience sitting in many congressional transcribed interviews.
And your view is he is also a valid whistleblower?
Again, he's not my client. I can't speak to his claims.
That's
I
right.
do have the view that going out
Don't get
and,
trapped.
Again, the idea, attacking someone saying you haven't yet been given the magic wand of whistleblower status, I believe that's inappropriate. I'm not familiar with all of the substance of his personnel actions.
Huh. Well, might it cause you some concern? Let me show some tweets on the screen.
It's not his
Mr.
client.
Hill.
It has nothing to do with
This
him.
one,
This is conjecture.
he
You
had
might as well
queries
go.
about
Okay,
January
so
6th.
you might as well say that your sister's cousin's brother's father's roommate made these posts, and he once was a client of one of your people in your law firm. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and review these. This is inadmissible. This is ridiculous. This has nothing to do with anything. Hill is not his client, and you're asking him based upon pure speculative testimony. Just because someone is in association with this person does not mean it transfers to these 3-4 whistleblowers. Ridiculous line of questioning. And if I was Jim Jordan, I would absolutely shoot it down. 100%.
That it was instigated by the deep state, not by insurrectionists who were up to no good.
Hi, Kelly. Welcome.
To hang the vice president, Republican vice president, I might add, of the United States, or other depredations. It was the deep state that led to this. Are you familiar with that tweet?
No.
Here's another one.
No. Why would I be? He's not my client.
Are you familiar with this tweet?
No, because
In
he's not
which
my
he
client.
Talked again that the deep state is real on the January.
What the hell happened? Oh, they stopped it. Hold on. See if I can get this back up, because Fox may have shut it down. They do that so you watch an ad. Let's see if I can get it back up.
I got a comment. You should switch to sledding. They should switch to be.
All right, I'm going to mute that real quick. Damn, that was getting good. But here's the question. No, I'm not familiar with it. I'm also not familiar with the 17 trillion different tweets that happen every quarter. Of course I'm not. What does this have to do with anything? And once again, don't entertain it. Just simply shut them down. No, I'm not familiar with that. Okay, live stream is finished. Is this going, where else is it? You guys said this is going on in Newsmax? Let's see if it's on Fox. It's on Fox. We'll go to Newsmax.
Department of Justice over the FBI. We are the checks and balances in the system. We have to draw this attention to this because it's our oversight duty. committee. We have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice, over the FBI. We are the checks and balances in the system. We have to draw this attention to this because it's our oversight duty. We're all trying to fulfill our responsibilities and our patriotic duties here. I am grateful to you men for your willingness to stand forward and take the arrows as you have, even from members of Congress over here who are trying to disparage you. It's disgusting. I thank you for your patriotic responsibility. Look, the free speech of parents is chilled. The speech and the duty of whistleblowers is chilled. We got a problem, folks, and we're trying to fix it. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The committee will be in order. Members of the audience are
Shut up,
refrain
Garcia.
from any type of applause or anything. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for unanimous consent.
I thank the chair. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the interview of George Hill dated February 7th before the Judiciary Committee, in which he explicitly identifies.
All righty. So we are seeing some fireworks inside this subcommittee on the weaponization.
All right, I'm going to OAN. I'm going to go to Newsmax.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for unanimous consent.
I thank.
Let's see if we can get back
Suspension
to.
decision is still under adjudication.
There we
Who
go.
came in on January 6th.
I think it's the first time we've been.
The situation in which you find yourselves, but this is not a forum with more questions about the nature of this hearing than I began. I yield.
No, actually, Mr. Hill did not have counsel for his transcribed interview, so my partner, Jason Foster.
Okay, we're going to go back to where we were.
Or other depredations. It was the deep state that led to this. Are you familiar with that tweet?
No.
Here's another one.
No. Nope.
Are you familiar
and I
with
wouldn't be
this
because he's
tweet?
not my client.
In which he talked again that the deep state is real on the January 6th insurrection.
Just to be clear, I'm not familiar with any of his tweets. We just believe that it can be helpful for people to have counsel, and we were willing to assist in that way.
Well, but isn't it also helpful to kind of know a little bit of background when you are providing counsel?
We were just there for the procedural counsel of the interview, not to represent him in all his interests.
I understand, but wouldn't you,
No, you don't.
want to be curious about his status and what led him to be?
I'm sure it's quite possible that my co-counsel, Jason Foster, is familiar with these. I literally wasn't even an employee of Empower at that time. I was still sitting on the Merit Systems Protection Board.
And what's your view? Do you believe that January 6th was instigated
My
by
view
the
is
deep
immaterial
state?
and irrelevant to this. Oh my God! Why? You know what? Everyone keeps saying Matt get into politics. I really want to go up against some of these douchebags. Why are you going to swear me in? How is my testimony relevant on somebody I don't know? And how is it within your constitutional right to ask me my opinion on January 6th when this has absolutely nothing to do with January 6th? Why is my political opinion and who I vote for and who I stand with from a political ideology important to this conversation? You're a Democrat. Does that mean that these questions that you're asking are absolutely not above board simply because you have political ideology? What do you think about January 6th, sir? Oh, this isn't my hearing. Well, certainly this isn't relevant questioning to the whistleblowers. Why are you asking me questions? Why aren't you talking to them? We're here to uncover what they want to know. And once again, it seems even though you have deposed them and you have had hundreds of hours and thousands of questions asked, and you were given that time when they were deposed, you don't seem to want to have that conversation here. Why is that? Fuck these guys, man. They're ridiculous. A doghouse lawyer could run circles around Colonel Sanders.
Instigated by the deep state?
Define the deep state, sir.
Thank you. Good
I
question.
sure don't either.
Oh, good. All right.
Great question.
Because it is a phrase frequently used by the former president of the United States. So it's.
So what?
it's
I
out
don't know
there,
the president.
But you don't know what it means.
Obviously, at the Merit Systems Protection Board, we dealt with people at all layers of bureaucracy.
Well, I actually kind of share that with you. I don't know what it means either. I think it's kind of made up, like a boogeyman, so that we can use it as a catch-all. I must say, on this hearing, y'all have employment grievances. That doesn't make you whistleblowers. And maybe those grievances are legitimate, or maybe some aspects of it are legitimate, and all of you have careers, and I'm sorry for the situation in which you find yourselves, but this is not a forum for individual members of any agency, federal agency, unless there's a broad pattern of discrimination or violation of law, to air their grievances, their employment grievances. And I must say, listening to this hearing, I don't walk away convinced of anything other than we're listening to sad tales of certain individuals about their situation.
And what made you come to that conclusion? Was it you asking absolutely no questions to qualify or quantify the aforementioned disposition? Simply because all you did was try to make a connection to counsel who had absolutely no representation of a client who's not even here today. And you want me to testify based upon what is in his head of his tweets, and then go ahead and give you the definition based upon the former president of the United States, who I also have no relationship, never met, or never conversed with, and testify based upon what he thinks in his head. Well, sir, it does not strike me as odd that you have absolutely no clarification, since you did absolutely no research and asked any questions that would clarify anything based upon your previous statements. So thank you fucking very much.
Enumeration of grievances does not constitute whistleblower status. And I'm not quite sure why we had this hearing. I certainly don't think it proves some consistent pattern of wrongdoing by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I've heard some things here that run counter to the history of the FBI. The gentlelady, I think from Florida, said like a new idea that they got in the intelligence business that would have come as news to J. Edgar Hoover, who loved intelligence and in fact preferred it over some forms of law enforcement. Had a whole network in South America.
Yeah, he also wore a dress.
When President Truman told him he had to get out of that business. So
he wore frilly laced
thank you for being
panties
here.
too.
But I must tell
sounds
you,
like he's a liberal.
I leave more skeptical and with more questions about the nature of this hearing than I began. I yield back.
I have more questions that I will not ask
Mr.
next
Chairman,
time.
if I could sink a very short point of privilege. For the record, I left Congress in 2019 and returned in 2021. I believe the gentleman saw an absence of conduct by me when I wasn't in Congress.
I must say, I'm so fond of my friend from California, it was like he was still here.
And I thank my good friend from Virginia. Yield back.
Yeah, and I would just point out before I recognize the gentleman from Louisiana that just for the committee's
Mr.
benefit,
Chairman?
Mr. Vindman was not the whistleblower.
Mr. Chairman.
He was retaliated
The
against for
whistleblower
testifying
remained,
pursuant to a lawful
remained
subpoena.
anonymous, and unlike
That's
Mr.
right.
Allen, we never saw Mr. Allen's willingness to give us the transcript. We never saw the transcript from the anonymous whistleblower.
What are you
That's
talking
correct.
about? There was a
Gentleman from
complaint
Louisiana.
that was publicly disclosed.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman made statement.
Hey, it's Garcia. Go figure.
I've already recognized Mr. Johnson.
Thanks for
Thank you, Mr.
disrespecting
Chairman.
Texas.
The Democrats, our friends on the other side of the aisle, are trying their best to obscure the purpose of this hearing and to pretend like they don't understand the meaning of it. Here it is. Activists in the FBI
I like
and the
this guy,
Department
by
of
the way.
Justice have weaponized the full weight of their agencies against everyday Americans. It's alarming. The examples that have been highlighted by this committee are shocking to the sensibilities of all the people that we represent, and they want us to get action and answers and accountability. The FBI, here's a couple of examples. The FBI sought to label concerned parents at school board meetings domestic terrorists. We know that they sought
Right
to
here.
recruit spies and informants inside the congregations of traditional Catholic churches. We know that they worked with the social media platforms hand in hand, almost as partners over the last two election cycles, to censor and silence conservatives online that they disagreed with. Sometimes they were
Right here.
candidates. And now, the people at this table who are patriots, who this bothered their consciences, who knew that this was against their oaths of service and their duty, spoke up, and they're being retaliated against. Mr. O'Boyle, I wanted to just discuss one of these examples. In your transcribed interview with committee members, you stated that federal law enforcement involvement at school board meetings would, in your words, absolutely chill parents from exercising their First Amendment rights. Can you explain a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yes, so one of the examples given in the congressional letter included an example where a neighbor or somehow someone knew a parent that they believed was extreme, and so they called the FBI and reported that parent to the FBI. When citizens in this country get to a point where they can call the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world on their neighbor just because they disagree with them,
Amy, ban
that is
Harold Wallace,
chilling
please.
to the First Amendment rights of the people who are getting the FBI called on them.
That is absolutely right. The parents who are concerned about their kids' education have a right to come to the school board meeting and express those sentiments, and they should not have fear of the federal government investigating them or doing, as you testified and explained to us, that the FBI counterterrorism and criminal divisions came together to create a unique threat tag to label these parents domestic terrorists. Mr. O'Boal, is it accurate to say that you tried to fix all these issues within the FBI through the chain of command, and that it was only after no action was taken that then you came forward?
Listen, embrace the commercials, folks. It's how I get paid. The pittance that I make off these live shows, which unfortunately are like $10 to $15 per show. So embrace the ads, please. Call them pennies from heaven. Go buy a
Congress
shirt.
to disclose this information.
It's accurate that we did discuss it at the squad level, but the FBI is set up in a way where line agents like me or line supervisors even, they're not going to be able to accomplish fixing such a vast problem from the inside of the FBI.
And what you've done is exactly what federal law requires of you.
We'll talk about it, Mike.
We recognize, as was said here a moment ago, we recognize and protect whistleblowers for their patriotic duty. Why? Because it's essential to maintain the rule of law and to make sure that corruption does not fester throughout the government. And isn't it true that once the FBI found out you spoke to Congress, that your security clearance was then suspended?
Yes, I believe that's what happened.
And what effect has this had on your ability to provide for your young family?
I've since had to rely on charity because the FBI stopped paying me, and there's no other way for me to make a living. I know from other whistleblowers that the FBI routinely denies them the ability to get outside employment, and then as a special agent, you can only make $7,500 a year outside of your government salary. So you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand, we want to try to get our jobs back because we are trying to do our patriotic duty, but on the other hand, we still have families to take care for. It's essentially a death sentence in the modern era.
Yeah, talk about a chilling effect, right? Not only have we chilled the rights of parents to go and express their views, any other whistleblower better take note, right? They better take note. You may not be able to feed your family. It's disgusting. Your security clearance was wrongfully suspended. You have no recourse, right? Because here's the thing. If you wrongfully strip clearances, the FBI is the one that you appeal to, right? The FBI is supposed to investigate itself. Is that right?
That's right. That
I
is
just want
correct.
everybody to understand, I only got 40 seconds left. The FBI investigating itself. This is why we're here, folks. This committee, we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice, over the FBI. We are the checks and balances in the system.
I like this guy.
We have to draw this attention to this
I
because
like
it's our
this guy.
oversight duty. We're all trying to fulfill our responsibilities and our patriotic duties here. I am grateful to you men for your willingness to stand forward and take the arrows as you have, even from members of Congress over here who are trying to disparage you. It's disgusting. I thank you for your patriotic responsibility. Look, the free speech of parents is chilled. The speech
I'm
and the
putting this
duty
guy
of
on. I'm putting
whistleblowers
this guy
is
on my
chilled.
my
We got
watch
a
list. I
problem,
like this
folks,
guy.
and we're trying to fix it. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yields back.
Louisiana,
Committee,
right?
committee will be in
Chairman, I have
order.
a
Members of the audience
parliamentary inquiry.
should refrain from any type of applause or anything. The chair
Parliamentary
recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for a unanimous consent.
I
request.
thank the chair. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the interview of George Hill dated February 7th with the Judiciary Committee, in which he explicitly identifies Empower Oversight Mr. Jason Foster as his counsel, for the record. I thank
Who cares?
the chair.
He's not here today.
Objection, the chair now recognizes Mr. Garamendi for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Shut
Mr.
up,
Garamendi is
Garcia.
recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
We can do this all day. Mr. Garamendi is recognized,
Okay, let's do it all day. Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
and you're not recognized.
Mr. Chairman, there's a member in the side of the dais who has not been waived in on committee. Would like to know, is he asking to be waived in, or is he going to send the audience, or has he joined somebody's staff since he's against the wall?
Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, can I have an answer to my question, please?
He's a colleague. He's not been waived in. Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Well, we'd be happy to waive him in if he wants to sit in, but he's up in the days area, but he's not in the audience.
we waive him in, he's
Actually
gonna-
sitting where most times staff stands.
As is customary in the Congress.
Yeah.
parliamentary inquiry is essentially it is based upon the proceedings and something that goes against principle or a clarifying question to ensure that the proceeding is following SOP, standard operating procedure. She's trying to distract. This is what these fucking people do. And she's making a parliamentary inquiry to break the momentum of the hearing, to have sound bites to make sure that she's put on CNN over any of the contextual proceedings of the hearing that actually are going to get to the overall point of the hearing. But a parliamentary inquiry can be recognized, but then they use it as a blocking point, right? They use it to stall the proceeding. That's what it is. And she's saying because somebody is in the dais standing, that they either have to be waved in or join the gallery. And what they're saying is that this is standard for a person to be there if they want to be, and they don't have to be waved in or sworn in or be a part of the hearing itself, to simply observe what's taking place.
Anything to obscure the facts, anything to stall the committee hearing. Unbelievable.
I'm not stalling. I think we need to follow procedures.
Mr. Garamendi is recognized for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that Mr. Garamendi's time be restored since it was taken by inappropriate behavior.
Gentleman is recognized.
Where are all the Marjorie Taylor Greene haters? Now, I'm not a fan of MTG in any way, shape, or form. I don't like her. I don't care. Every party needs her. Everybody needs a hatchet man or woman. Nancy Pelosi does it for the liberals. Garcia, Schiff, Nadler, those guys do it for the other side. We have our own hatchet people, and I think it's just completely stupid. It's the person who does not give a shit, who is there to be as contentious and unruly as possible. And everyone's like, oh, MTG's a hero. Well, if she's a hero, then Rashid Tlaib's a hero. Once again, if you say it's true for one, you have to say it's true for the other folks. Oh, well, MTG's on the side of righteousness. No, she believes in your political ideology. That's why you think she's right. So there's a very big distinct difference. I think MTG has done some things that are fantastic. I think she's done some stuff that's absolutely fucking stupid, like most politicians. But Garcia is that person on the left. She is an instigator. She is trying to obstruct. She is trying to use everything she can to make sure this proceeding has no weight or merit and give enough talking points to CNN so they can play their sound bites to show that this thing is a mockery. That's the only reason she's getting in her punts and kicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hearing, as similar hearings, tends to devolve into shouting back and forth and accusations back and forth.
Amen.
I'm trying to understand the testimony by the witnesses and their lawyer. I'm trying to find the issue that is pertinent to the committee. Yes, we do investigations, presumably to write law to address problems. I've listened as best I could as the conversations have gone back and forth, and I'm still trying to really figure out why we are spending time here if indeed our task is to address problems, in this case in the FBI, and how we might find a solution to those problems. There appears to be but one issue, as I can try to understand it, and that is that the use of the security issue makes it difficult for the participant, whistleblower, to find satisfaction. Is that the case, Mr. Levitt?
Yes, sir. There are limited protections. One of them came after the Whistleblower Protection Enhancement Act in 2012, just an executive.
Your recommendation is a change in the whistleblower law as it applies to, I suppose, all federal agencies.
Yes, because as it is right now for DOJ employees, they have to wait a year after being suspended before they can go anywhere to appeal as a whistleblower the suspension of their clearance.
I see. So have you made a specific recommendation to the committee as to the change of law that would address the problem that you have identified?
That's why I'm here right now. I just made it.
Okay. So you believe you have, other than, I would appreciate in writing your specific change to the law.
Would be happy to, and to the extent that it's helpful.
Great. No, it's my time.
It's good.
There are other things going on here. Mr. Freed,
Democrat
you
or
have
not,
very
that's a hell of a
interesting
point.
Background, obviously in the FBI and beyond. But you've also had a very interesting tour on Twitter. I find it most interesting during our break to go and vote. The majority, including some Democrats, voted to express support for law enforcement officers and condemning efforts to defund and dismantle local law enforcement agencies. Specifically condemning, this is the joint resolution, House Committee Resolution 49, a concurrent resolution, condemns and calls to defund, disband, dismantle, and abolish the police. Mr. Freed, have you ever put a tweet out to defund, disband, dismantle, and abolish the FBI?
I have.
And the FBI is a police agency, yes?
The FBI is my contention that they're a domestic intelligence agency with law enforcement capability.
They are a police agency, thank you.
Yes, they are.
I suppose consistency is the hobgoblin of a small mind. But
I like this guy.
At least one of the witnesses here wants to disband the FBI.
Yeah, that's a conflict of
Which would be
interest.
counter to what we just voted on the floor of the House of Representatives. There are plenty of problems.
That is an outstanding point. The first articulate and factual point that the Democrats have made. And that is two of them, actually, because to have a solution for the problem you're presenting it should have been mission number one. And it trivializes the overall statements of the whistleblowers, because if you don't have a solution for the problem that you're condemning, then ultimately, what are you doing there? Number one. Number two, you have to be very careful when you are a whistleblower or you're a person who is going to have a certain dog in the fight. And when he says consistency is the hobgoblin of a simple mind, it basically means that you better, if you're going to say I'm holier than thou and, thus walk on water, you better ensure that that's the case. Otherwise, it will follow you. And this is a case of a very small tweet that shows that he has an axe to grind with the FBI. Now, this could have been done posthumously from his ouster from the FBI, which would explain, but that also aligns with his intent. Now, you're not discrediting the witness, but what you're saying is that you have some ulterior motives here. You have an axe to grind with the FBI. So therefore, your testimony may not be substantiated based upon your personal and emotional attachment to the opinion that you hold. And if you want to dismantle and absolve the FBI, is this the way that you're doing that? Is that the way you're manifesting your internal desire here on stage today? It's a fantastic point. And it's the only one that's been made that has any credence. And if I was the Democrats, I would shut the fuck up, every single one of them, and yield my time to this guy, because this guy's interested in actually getting to the point, and that's his job. His job is not to discredit the witnesses. It is to actually balance the evidence that's being presented and ask a line of questioning that will either validate or invalidate what they're saying or his opinion based upon the evidence that he's heard. It's a multifaceted process. It's not his job just to discredit the witness. It's to formulate his own opinion so he can make a judgment. He's the only Democrat that's done that, and he should be applauded to. If he's a Democrat, I think he is.
There is a formal process for whistleblowers to have their issues adjudicated. 2012, members of the committee voted for it. I certainly voted for it in 2012. And there appears to be a glitch. It would seem to me that we would be useful to use our time to delve into this glitch. If we determine that it is a problem, then the appropriate thing to do would be the chairman of the of the Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, she
put
did not
forth
Appropriations Committee.
a bill to address
That's correct.
the problem. The shouting back and forth has done little to.
You can certainly implement legislation to correct this, and that's fantastic. You can put an amendment on the bill. You can propose a resolution, a joint resolution or a concurrent resolution to go ahead and provide that from the Senate. You can do it from presidential means. You can do it from state legislature. You can do it on individual state and local level, and not on a federal level too. Everything he's saying is correct. But in this case, that doesn't help these gentlemen. The precedence is important when making a decision, but so is being able to demonstrate causation, not just precedent, causation. So something happens that requires a change in the law. You don't get to those people and say, oh, well, we're sorry. Too bad. The next people this happens to, we'll create a law to take care of them. No, you can actually retroactively amend that to encapsulate these people who are bringing it to your attention. That's the one thing he's not saying. And I think he's going to go a long way around the barn and get there. And I think he's acting in the best interest of the whistleblower, but also the current laws that predate this issue. And as a person who was intimately involved with proposing and signing off on these laws, he's an expert in the subject, and he's handling himself thus. This is the way Democrats should be. This is the way Republicans should be. And the last two speakers have been the strongest out of both. The Republican representative from Louisiana was absolutely fantastic. And this gentleman, who I believe is a Democrat, because that's the way this works, is it's handed off. I think right now it's like a 12-8 panel as far as Republicans to Democrats, but they share time based upon Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. And then obviously the majority would have the final 4 spots, but they try to mix it as best they can. But I want to find out who this guy is. I don't know who he is. And I'm ashamed to say that because I usually know most of the legislators. But his total line of questioning is absolutely pertinent and well thought out and articulated. And he seems to be the only Democrat who's interested in getting to a viable solution for the problem they're bringing. I love it.
Illustrate or provide information on the details of the problem. And definitely,
gentleman's time.
I agree with those who say
let him finish. Shut up, Jordan. Let him finish.
Gentleman's time expired.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to allow Mr. Biggs to sit on the dais.
Without objection. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See, I know that Jim Jordan has to make sure that the 5 minutes is consistent, but you can let a person finish their thought. This guy's not grandstanding. He's not monopolizing. If someone can find out who he is, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to try to find him, but fantastic line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm
going to go back and try to find this guy.
Have a right
to make a living. I know from other
rights. Can you explain the meaning of it? Here it is.
In fact, preferred it over some.
Have a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr.
Oh, shut up, Garcia.
One of them came.
Defund, disband, dismodel.
I'll find out who he is.
The Judiciary Committee.
How do you like it? Serving the country as F. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say I've sat struggling to figure out what I think the Americans who may watch this hearing are to take from it. And it's troubling. An aspect of the ranking member's opening statement was interesting. I heard this part of it that really stuck with me. It sort of suggested, this is not what she said specifically, but it was sort of a paraphrase of what I heard her saying. To you witnesses, especially the 3 who've been serving the country as FBI agents and before, it was sort of like, so your lives have been turned upside down by the FBI in retaliation for raising questions about abuses of the rights of Americans? Good. How do you like it? That's kind of what I heard. It seemed that her perspective, she went on and talked about how people have been victimized by police all across the country. ACAB is the idea. And it's almost like since she thinks they're victims of plenty, it's okay if you're victimized. There's a supreme irony in that, isn't there? I mean, you have one of you was concerned about the improvident use of a SWAT team. And that's been ridiculed. Another of you has been concerned about the investigation of people by the preeminent law enforcement agency in the country for nothing more than being on a bus to travel to a place where there was a speech by the president and so forth, and a couple people on that bus were subsequently looked at. That your concern was whether the investigation was adequately predicated for those people. And that's ridiculed. It's astonishing. One of you was concerned about about the FBI sending people out to interview persons who were going to a school board meeting and expressing their views, because all they were engaged in was First Amendment activity. That's not an adequate predication for the investigative attention of law enforcement. And that's ridiculed. I don't quite get it. I will say this, in this process, fair cross-examination and even the impeachment of the credibility of witnesses is appropriate. Now, I will say, the things that have been attempted as impeachment of credibility here, no court in the country would allow.
That's right. That's
because they are not fair
right.
mechanisms for attempting to do that.
Except for the previous guy.
What has struck me is that these whistleblowers have your comportment, your demeanor, your poise, your articulation, your discipline has been exemplary at every point, even
Thanks,
as
Amy.
the members on the dais beclown themselves. It's quite a testament, and it deepens something. I worried, to be candid, about this hearing because many Americans, it is my impression, and we're continuing to investigate, many Americans have been victimized by the distortions that have occurred in the leadership of the FBI. And I worried that we might have that. If you ever heard the quote, it's sort of used in athletics, never tell anyone your troubles, half the people don't care, and the other half are glad it happened to you. And that's a supremely pessimistic worldview. I don't really subscribe to it, but you've heard that out there. I think this is making a clear point, and I commend each of you for what you've done here, coming here and demonstrating who you are, and letting yourself be attacked in this way, because you've borne it really remarkably well. And I think Americans need to hear it because there are other glimpses of just how the victimization is going on and how it's victimization at scale. This is one fact that's struck me. The Bank of America records, the story that Bank of America turned over the credit card transactions, whether for an aircraft or a lodging or the purchase of a cup of coffee, for everyone who decided to come to Washington, to be in Washington area, the Northern Virginia area. That's one of the things that you asked questions about. There are victims all over the place. All of the people who suffered when the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security got involved in censorship with social media platforms, millions and millions of tweets and narratives being taken down.
That's right.
That is victimization at scale. It must be resolved. And the fact that those who profess to be most concerned about victimization of people by law enforcement in this country join in the victimization of you. I think that's the takeaway, at least for me, from this hearing, and my time has expired.
Well done. Didn't ask a single question, but
the chair now
it is what it is.
recognizes Mr. Allred. Gentleman from Texas, recognized.
I yield my time to Mr. Goldman.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to thank those of our witnesses here who have served in the military for your military service. I want to thank you for coming in. We on this side support whistleblowers. I certainly support whistleblowers, and you and the committee majority can be certain that we will follow all House rules to maintain the confidentiality of whistleblowers until they have been publicly identified, as
Here comes
you all
the political
now have
hack.
here. What our concern with is not really at the bottom whether or not you are whistleblowers. That's something that neither you can determine or Mr. Levitt can determine or we can determine. That's something that we understand is being adjudicated and ultimately could end up in court, where the ultimate determination would be. Our concern is that you all have met with the committee majority perhaps several times, you have provided information, documents, testimony, and we're in the dark. And that's not how Congress works.
Then provide,
that's not how committees
provide
work. And I'm sure,
whistleblower
Mr.
status.
Levitt, you would agree with me that when you were on the Hill, that's not how things work. And so
Depended on the source.
That is what, sorry?
I just said it depended on what was happening. I've seen examples of congressional staff retaliating against whistleblowers, and I've also seen those whistleblowers then refuse to engage with those congressional staff.
Fair enough, and maybe that happens, but we haven't even been given the opportunity to do that in violation of committee rules. Ultimately, what we are here for is because these three individuals are expressing in various degrees their objection to their treatment with the FBI. They have also, in varying degrees, expressed support for the January 6th insurrection, and in some cases have even allowed those personal views to
that would have been
influence
struck from the
your
court.
official duties. Now,
see, here's a prime example. You're trying to malign these people with January 6th, and you also called it an insurrection, which no charges have been filed. Only the insinuation by Democrats and the media have called it an insurrection. Now, I am one for fair game. If you're going to call January 6th an insurrection, then you better call the protests against Amy Coney Barrett, where they broke into the anteroom chambers of the Senate floor to protest and breaking in without due process of entry by filing a petition with the government is insurrection. What happened in Seattle, what happened in Washington, what happened in Dallas, what happened in Chicago, what happened in New York and Baltimore, where police stations were fired and Molotov cocktailed by Black Lives Matter groups in protest, whether they were people who were from the inner city and not a part of that or not, it does not matter, because what we have learned is that it doesn't matter who does it as long as the moniker of BLM or Trump supporters or whatever were there. All wrongdoing is accountable to that group. So the 57,000 people who showed up peacefully and left at the Donald Trump rally on January 6th, all of them are insurrectionists as well by association. Therefore, BLM is responsible for all the riots and the $2.5 billion that happened, because those are the fucking rules that you put in place, and it's predicated upon your own set of rules and behavior. So therefore, what you're saying and the point that you're making is that because January 6th took place, it was an insurrection, even though, like I said, there's been no formal charges of any of the people being charged with insurrection, seditious conspiracy, those type of things, obstruction of justice, those type of things have been charged, but not insurrection. That would have been stricken from court. He would not have been able to say that. There would have been an objection, and he would have had to go ahead and strike that from the record. But by him calling it insurrection, you are then applying it to these whistleblowers and discrediting and discounting their testimony. No. Okay, Olivia found out who the guy was. His name is... Good research. John Garamendi. Yes, I know John Garamendi, actually, from California, 8th District, U.S. Representative John Garamendi. Awesome. Send me that, please. Good job, Livy. So John Garamendi, I like him. I like him a lot. Anyway, that's the point.
Today, and the reason why whether or not people are whistleblowers matters or your credibility matters is you're just the three individuals, three people in an organization of tens of thousands who are making these allegations, and so credibility does matter.
You've been listening live to a...
All right, everybody. I think we got enough of this today. I will continue to report on this. Tonight, I will not be available. And the reason why is because I am going to be at my son's baseball game, and they are going for their undefeated streak to continue. They're 8-0-1, and they're looking to go 9-0-1 against the Colorado Rockies, the White Sox. So I'll be wearing my White Sox hat. I don't want to hear about it. I'm not a White Sox fan. I'm a Little League Sox fan and a dad. Listen, I did this show impromptu because I thought it was important enough. I'm going to try to record a show before I go to Little League in regards to the 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate that is missing from a train that went from California to Wyoming. It is extremely alarming, extremely concerning. I made some comments in regards to white nationalism and this whole push that, they started with domestic terrorists and calling parents this. And then if you have a Don't Tread flag or a Molon Leve tattoo or a flag or whatever, that somehow you are a part of a domestic terrorist group. FBI Director Wray said, he hadn't seen that document. However, the three FBI agents that I spoke to said it was widely pushed, widely signed off by assistant directors of the FBI, and Ray was completely aware of it. It started with that when we were questioning about some of the teachings that were in school, and we would go to the school board meetings. Brandon Michon went to the school board meetings, and we were labeled domestic terrorists for that. Now, I want to be completely clear. I'm not pushing conspiracy theory. I'm not saying the government's going to do something nefarious. What I'm trying to tell you is that I've seen this before. I've seen this rhetoric before. We were worried about Donald Trump supporters, and they said, oh, well, Donald Trump supporters are violent, and they're violent at the rallies, and they're white nationalists, and they're fascists, and they support the Klan. And then we saw January 6th take place. And there's a lot of issue. 300 and some odd rallies have been taking place with Donald Trump, and there have been 2 or 3 altercations from a physical nature that have happened outside, one inside when he first started, and he said, get him out of here, get him out of here. But as far as any type of violence against people from a racial standpoint, or any of those rallies breaking up and then committing crime like we see from Antifa, it didn't take place. It seems so out of sorts in January 6th, and a lot of people scratch their head. And you start getting questions about Ray Epps and FBI in the audience and all this other stuff. What these whistleblowers are saying that there was FBI in the audience. People are starting to ask questions, and they're concerned. And I don't propose that I know what happened that day. I've always said until I have factual evidence, I will go ahead and continue to base it off of opinion and speculation and the information that I have. So when I say that I bring up questions about 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate, it's because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that I know what that can do, and I know what damage that can do. And basically, you could have 12 Oklahoma City bombings from 60,000 pounds. The U.S. government and the FBI should be questioning that. The Senate Oversight Committee should be focused on that today. Instead, what we're doing is trying to discredit whistleblowers because we believe they have some sort of political ideology. I don't condemn the whistleblowers. There are people who believe that January 6th was a setup. There's people who believe that it was 100% legit. I don't care about people's opinions. I care about fact. And every American has a right to believe whatever they want to believe. The question is it politically motivated? I think some of the questioning from the Democrats got better as it went along. There are a couple there who are interested in asking things and uncovering what's going on and finding a solution for whistleblower status, which I think was absolutely fantastic. And there were Republicans there who were there really to bring out the questions and help people understand what the whistleblowers were saying. I think Garcia is an absolute shill. I think there's a lot of Democrats there who are just there to discredit people and make them seem like conspiracy theorists or loons. That's my frustration when it comes to these hearings, is very rarely are people attempting to get to the truth. And that's unfortunate. I will try to get to the point of the ammonium nitrate tonight. I'm going to obviously make a correlation between Oklahoma City, which I think is relevant to this case, and try to go ahead and put all these breadcrumbs together that we're hearing more and more rhetoric every single day that there's this white nationalist movement that's anti-government. And it seems to me that we are gearing up for something. Now, either the government has intelligence and they are hearing the rumblings and they're getting notifications and precursors to something bad that's going to happen in the United States, or something bad is going to be happening and it's going to be laid at somebody's footsteps. If we think that the government hasn't done this in the past in other countries, of course they have. We know. We can talk about Lemnos Isles. We can talk about Afghanistan. We can talk about Greece. We can talk about Libya. We can talk about Syria. We can talk about funding and creating ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That was actually CIA ran, and Osama bin Laden used to work for the CIA. These things are not conspiracy theory. They're fact. We supported the incursion in Afghanistan and the fight against Russia, and we were funding the Al-Qaedans. We fund the Shiites and the Sunnis. We know what we've done. And anyone who pretends that we haven't, the question is could it be done on the U.S. soil? That's what we need to wonder. Is the CIA operating on U.S. soil? Well, they certainly did for the John F. Kennedy assassination. Those documents lay it at the CIA's feet. The question is, are some of these things that we're considering conspiracy theory, or do we need to start asking more poignant questions that are on point? My question is, where is 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate? That makes me concerned. That makes me worry. And if some white nationalist zealot group has it, well, we should get to work and find it. But if there is no explanation and we don't know how it disappeared, well, that should be a question that everyone should be worried about, not that somebody has an AR-15 on their wall, because honestly, that thing compared to ammonium nitrate is a water pistol. That's what I want to know. Anyway, folks, I appreciate you listening. Thank you for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. Stop by thedumbshow.com if you would like. You can go watch some other episodes. You can find out when my schedule is. You can pick up some hats and shirts. Olivia and I will not be on tonight, but I will try to do a recorded show. We will be back Friday with a recorded show for sure and a live show as well. God bless everybody. Thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. And for the FBI agents who came on and decided to listen, I hope you enjoyed it as well. No, I am not a domestic terrorist. I'm just a person who has an opinion, who worked for the government way too damn long, and I've got questions that have no answers. God bless, and I will see you on my recorded show tonight. See ya. Have a good one. Maybe. What the heck happened? Hold on, everybody. Looking for the outro video. Looking for it. Trying to find it. Where did it go? Ah, there it is. Hold on. All right, there's one. Where's the other one? Where's the master? Oh, here it is. No, that's not it. Shit. Oh, there it is. See ya.
I'm David Boreanaz with the Cast the SEAL team, and we have an important message for returning vets. We want you to know if you're struggling to cope, there's help and it's just a phone call away.
The Veterans Crisis Line is staffed with experienced professionals who know your struggles.
There's no greater sacrifice in service to our country. We're able to enjoy our freedoms because of it.
Your service is important. You are important. For vets and their families, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help 24 hours a day. Please call